to bring our dreams into this reality. We set each other free. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Eagle's Nest podcast. We are filming live here from Southern Colorado, here in the San Luis Valley, just south of Crestone, just south of Blanca Peak, which just got her first bit of snow today for the first time, October 2nd. So she got her first little bit of snow on top. That means we're going to get snow here within the next 2 or 3 weeks down here in the valley. So that is a sudden end to the fall, the summer and the fall season, and going straight into winter. Yeah, but it's been all right here today. Man, shots go out and a lot of prayers go out to all the family in the southeast, in Florida, and everybody else that's been affected by this last storm system. Man, tons of devastation, and it happened right where me and Ella used to live at, down in southern Florida. Down in we used to live down in Fort Myers and Cape Coral. Some of the listeners know, and yeah, that storm hit directly right where we used to live at. So definitely got a lot of friends down there thinking about y'all, and a lot of prayers going out to and everything. If you can help out in any way, yeah, help out the people down in Florida that's going through just a crazy time. There's a whole island that's been condemned. A whole island, Pine Island, Florida. Yeah, when we used to live there, used to drive our boat to there's a little restaurant on Pine Island, and yeah, now that whole island is condemned and gone. So it's for people to live on it. So the people actually have to move out. It's a crazy thing. But in other news, we got Grant Cameron here tonight, and he was the first unofficial, don't know how you want to put it, guest on Eagles Nest podcast. So having him back, he's a good friend of mine, been on his show a couple times. But we are going to talk about these notes that's been circling around, the Oke Shannon notes. They're from the 80s. I know some of them are from 1985. From being in 1985, I know there's some other dates on there of other things. Um, I'm not even gonna try to unpack it. I'm gonna have Grant, when Grant comes in, we're gonna unpack all this and get down to the bottom. I got 26 pages of notes. We're gonna share them on the screen. We're gonna go through them one by one, and yeah, we're gonna get into who knows what else. I love talking with Grant. I love bouncing ideas, and I love learning from him, and just sharing back and forth. So this is going to be an amazing conversation. If all you guys don't know, let me see. Bear with me just a second. Okay. If y'all don't know, Grant has been a UFO researcher since 1975 and has been recognized as both the Leeds Conference International Researcher of the Year and the UFO Congress Researcher of the Year. He is world-renowned expert on UFOs, conspiracies, government cover-ups, and has spent decades watching and chronicling developments around extraterrestrial contact. He is also the author of Charlie Red Star. Links are all in the show notes in the bottom. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Grant in here. We're gonna get into this. Grant, Cameron, thanks for being on the Eagles Nest podcast. You kicked me in the ass, man, and got this whole thing rolling. So a lot of this whole thing that's come about in the past couple of months is due to you kicking me in the ass. So appreciate
it. My spiritual brother Drew, thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. How are you been, man?
I've been good. Yeah, I've been good. I was a little bit out of it. Now I'm sort of getting back in and trying to get some stuff done. And I think that's what it all comes down to. I've sort of been spending a lot of time recently looking at what is reality. And you hear these people talk about the fact that, I'm going to get off the karmic wheel. I'm not coming back again. That's it. This is my last show. And, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, sure, you're coming back. Once you get there and you realize that's what it's about. It's about coming to contribute. Like, why are some intelligence behind UFOs coming here to do stuff? Because that's what you do when you suddenly get spiritually enlightened. You become altruistic and you work for other people rather than yourself. You become a bee in the hive rather than somebody who's trying to hunt down the last animal on earth and that sort of stuff. So I really appreciate you're on the sort of the same trip I'm on, is understanding this thing and trying to contribute to the world and put out, because you get a lot of stuff, whether you're biblical or whatever it is. It's this idea, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so because we
Mhm.
have the answer, or we think we have the answer, and we have some understanding, it's up to us to contribute to the world to make it a better place. If we've got the right answers, we should be putting it out there.
So well said, and it goes along with the theme we've been talking about on this show. This we've had a lot of ayahuasca people on the show. Dr. Scott Irwin was on the show recently. He's I met him at Soul Quest in Orlando. Now he's living down in Ecuador with the Sasawashi tribe,
Wow.
and he's been down there over a year living with them, doing the medicine and helping with integration and everything, and helping integrate the Western medicine into down there in a good way. And Hamilton Souther, he's down in Peru. He's been down there over 20 years, and been leading ceremonies. And one of the messages that keeps abounding all the time, once once you get a taste of the truth, or a taste of true sovereignty, what the hell else are you gonna do like the next day other than trying to spread that to someone else? Like if it's authentic, like the byproduct is just a on desire is like a overcoming desire to spread it to other human beings. You
Yeah.
know, if you truly really feel it, and I don't claim to have the answer, but for me, it's the answer, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to get everybody else to figure it out know, however it comes to them. So yeah, and these notes come up, and so what about these guys? Like, does this come from a FOIA request? Is this from you, or who, or where did this come from?
Okay, I guess we should give the background story in terms of the fact that the Edgar Mitchell provided the original notes that started this whole circus. And what happened is he died, and a guy from Australia was in aerospace interest. There's a bunch of people hung around Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, who were very much into aerospace. So the one guy was there, and I guess, he didn't want these UFO stuff thrown out, so he took it to Australia, and he gave it to a friend of mine, James Rigney, who he had 4 documents, and he provided me with 4 documents that Edgar Mitchell, they come out of his collection, and they're all related to UFOs. One was the document we're going to talk about. It's sometimes called the Admiral Wilson memo, or the Admiral Wilson Edgar Mitchell, or Eric. Um, Shoot, I can't believe the names skipped me. I'm thinking of Eric Walker, but it's not Eric Walker. All right. Anyway, so these notes were out there. Eric Davis, it's Dr. Eric
Mm.
Davis he's actually working with NASA right now. But these notes are out there. And then I had talked to Eric Davis. This would be about 20 years ago. So what happened? There was an organization called NIDS, which was a billionaire, Bob Bigelow. He would bring these guys in about 6 times a year. And the guys who knew what was going on, like Kit Green from the CIA, Hal Puthoff, all these different people, Jacques Vallée. And what he would do is he would have these sort of weekend conferences where he would bring these guys in and pay them, and they would sort of go after things. So they'd look at cattle mutilations, they'd look at crop circles, or they'd look at whatever it is, abductions, whatever the subject was. And all these guys who had some background in the government would all throw their stuff in the ideas. And Bob Bigelow would just, for him, he was picking up stuff, he was gathering stuff and material information. And what happened was, one of the documents that had gotten to Edgar Mitchell, because Edgar Mitchell was on the board, so he saw a lot of these stuff that was written back and forth. And Eric Davis had done this. I guess they were working on the whole idea. Does the government have a UFO program? Do they have back engineering going on? Is there a project going on and stuff like that? And Eric Davis was very interested in that, and he was pushing. Whether he had help from the NIDS guys, I'm not sure, but he was just sort of NIDS was shutting down, and he was the head scientist. He got laid off there, and he has this interview with Admiral Tom Wilson, who was the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which advised the president on military affairs.
Wow.
And there was an interview that was done with him where he was given a briefing by Stephen Greer, Edgar Mitchell, and they basically told him, yeah, this thing's all for real. And they showed him a document which I haven't got on the screen, but a document that he looked at it, and it was an NRO document, and on there was all these project code names and stuff, and he realized that one of the organizations that was in this document he was in charge of, and he had no idea that they were doing this back engineering. So what he did is he started to make a push after Stephen Greer and Mitchell and all these people walked in there and gave him this briefing, and he goes and he gets I'm losing my train of thought here. They get the document, the notes done. Eric Davis goes to see Williams, or not Williams, Tom Wilson, to check on him for these. Did they give you this briefing? Did you go to try to find this group? Did you find this group? And basically, they sit in a car for over an hour, and he must have a tape recorder going because the first set of notes sounded like they were actually taped, and he had exact transcripts. And in that, Tom Wilson talks about the fact that he found the group that was back engineering the material, whatever UFO material they had, and they told him he didn't have a need to know, and hung up the phone on him and told him. And then he phoned back and they told him to get lost. Then he said, "Well, I've got the clearance on this, or I've got authority on this," and they said, "No, you don't." And basically, he was told to back off or he'd lose a star. He wanted to be the head of the the intelligence agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, and they told him he wouldn't be and he'd lose a star. He was an admiral; he'd lose one star if he didn't back off. And so he backed off and he stopped talking about it. Then what happened is Edgar Mitchell died, and Eric Davis's notes were in the file, and this guy from Australia picked this up. They were James Rigney was at a conference in Arizona. That's when I first saw these notes. This would be about 2019, November. He showed me these notes, and I really didn't want to see them. I was in a hurry. I was going to Tucson, and he said, "Give me 10 minutes." He showed me the first page of these notes, and on the first page of the notes, I immediately knew these documents were real. I knew they were important because they had Eric Davis, who I dealt with. He's a very, very sharp guy. He's probably the sharpest person in ufology, knows the most. He's got these security clearances now. He's sort of backing off talking and stuff like that. But he spent his whole life trying to figure out who was running the program. And he was on the inside. He had an intelligence background. He knew all the top scientists working on the UFO problem and stuff like that. So he knew sort of what was going on. And so I saw this, and then the other thing I realized that made it true was Oke Shannon's notes are on there. So it was Oke Shannon who was setting up the meeting with Eric Davis. And so when I saw Oke Shannon's name and Eric Davis's name on this document from 1985, I said to James Rigney, "Where did you get this?" And then I started to push to try to get a copy of it because I realized that Oke Shannon, I would be the only person in the UFO community who knew Oke Shannon was, because Eric Davis had given me his notes from a UFO meeting, a top secret UFO meeting in 1985. And I had these notes. Oke Shannon had a heart attack in 1999. And it was just after that I got a copy of these notes. And they said, "Well, if Oke dies, you can release these," because he was very, very sick. He died on the heart. He had an OBE, an out of body experience, or a near death experience. He died 6 times on the table. He tells this story about the angel and pushing him down. And it turns out it was the nurse pushing his hand down and praying. It was just fascinating story. But so he was very, very sick, and then he survived, and he's still alive. So he's like 22 years later, 23 years later, and he's still alive. And I got these notes, and then suddenly Oke Shannon, who's on these notes, went public. And so I said, "Well, why am I holding these notes? I mean, I'm going to release the notes." Oke, I guess, was not that pleased with it, but he wouldn't block the coverage. and he sort of was kind of upset about, what he would face in terms of questions and stuff. But I don't think he's really faced anything. We've had the notes out for about a week. I've talked about them, and that's the thing. These are Oke Shannon's notes from a separate meeting. This is a 1985 meeting that was held in a SCIF, which is a secure facility, which is they have all the top secret meetings in there. People sign off, and I'd like to take a camera or a cell phone into the room and stuff like that. It's all screened so you can't get signals and stuff. So he in this secure SCIF, they had this meeting in 1985, and that's the notes that have just been released that I put out there because I figured it fit into the first notes. It explained why this first meeting with the admiral took place, and Eric Davis's notes, which everybody's excited about, but there was one guy who set it up, and now he's public, so it's sort of expanding, and there's more and more people talking.
So this 26-page file is the notes from the meeting in the skiff.
Yeah, this is Oke Shannon's notes. There's actually two sets of notes. There's one by Jack Houck, who was an engineer for Boeing, and he was in there, but his notes aren't that extensive. Melinda Leslie, I don't know if you've interviewed her, but she has a copy of his notes. And when he died, she found these notes from this meeting. So the meeting was called the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group. But during the meeting, Melinda picked it up that it's talked about in both the Wilson leak notes that you heard about. These are famous notes that have been read into Congress. The United States Congress is trying to figure out where to go, and they actually read these notes into Congress, and they're
Wow.
going after the people on this document. But there's that copy, and then the one I have is the Oke Shannon notes. But these are his set of notes. They're more extensive than Jack House notes, which he left after he died, and they basically talk about the same sort of thing. It's a group called the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group, which actually it leaked at the time. The New York Times picked it up. Howard Bloom, who was a reporter for the New York Times, wrote a book on it called Out There, and in there you'll see it's called the UFO Working Group. Well, it was actually the real name was
Wow.
the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group, and then on the bottom we realized that they were talked about in both meeting Wilson notes and in the Shannon notes as the AP10. ATP or AP10, which is Advanced Theoretical Physics or Advanced Physics 10. And it's in both sets of notes. And that's the first time I've ever seen that expression, which means that may be what the actual name of it. AP 10 is the name of the group. So we've sort of discovered that because it's on both sets of notes. And I'd never noticed that before, that they were calling it is definitely the same meeting. And it was this top secret meeting where they go from topic to topic. So they talk about this topic and that topic, and they're basically all these high level guys. There's about 20 guys and they all have to have top secret, special compartmented intelligence. So it's SCI clearances after their name in order to get in the meeting, and they had to pay their own way there. So these guys go to this skiff and they start talking UFOs. These high level government guys, and what they're doing
Let's
is they're trying to get
wow.
funding. And at the same time, they realize somebody's running this thing. So if we get all these guys together, we can all work together, and someone will know who's running the show, and we're going to learn something from. So they're looking. Plus, they were trying to finance the thing. They were trying to get money to finance UFOs for an investigation, and that actually turned out to not work. Nobody wanted to give it the money like the Star Wars guys. They went to the head of the Star Wars, and the guy said, "I've got all this funding, and they're after me all the time. They're trying to get my funding, and if I do this, I'm not only going to lose your funding, I'll lose all my funding too. I'm not even going to touch this. There's no way I'm touching." He said, "I'm on your side. I agree with you, but I'm not touching this thing. There's no way." And that's part of the problem is that it's sort of like it's not anymore so much, but it used to be a contaminated issue. That if you had the UFO thing, then it was like, oh, Drew's got too much money in his department. Let's cut his budget because he's goofing around with UFOs. So nobody wanted to touch the subject, and so that was what these notes were about. And what happened? They were trying to do it like based on their own, like all these high level guys, and they basically didn't get any funding, and the thing sort of fell apart, and it sort of went away. But we've got the notes from that time as to what these high level guys were thinking about the UFO phenomenon.
Well, let's show them to the world for those people that haven't seen it. I know you've been on some other shows on Jimmy and
Yeah,
and some other shows on Dave. Yeah, I just appreciate you being here
yeah,
and helping us break this down.
yeah. You might,
Uh, I think this is gonna be a very monumental moment.
yeah,
And I was reading through there some things that I saw the Tehran incident in Iran
yeah,
back in the 70s, I believe.
yeah.
Uh, angel hair samples, and this
Yeah.
is a quote from these notes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just going through them one by one. Let
Okay.
me
I can
see.
point out for this first document something that I found of interest, and that is this top secret restricted and signals as required. But it's the Department of Energy, and what people have to realize, this whole argument with Donald Trump says he can declassify stuff by thinking about it. Well, I say the president can declassify stuff by talking about it. So if he talks about it, then everybody has to start declassifying it or whatever. But the one section of the government that he can't declassify is Department of Energy. It's run by the Atomic Energy Commission and the Congress, and he has to get permission. He can't just declassify. So this is, people always had the rumor that the UFO secret is being hidden in the Department of Energy because the president couldn't touch it. And you got to remember the Department of Energy was around at the time of the Roswell crash, and John Alexander, who was one of the people who worked there, took a lot of questions on UFOs and stuff like that. He's written a couple of books, one on UFOs. Talked about he's been had to answer questions numerous times about the idea that the live alien was stored at Los Alamos. When they had the live alien, it was actually held at Los Alamos. So he's faced that question numerous times. It's sort of been linked into the crash that they moved the material there, they moved the bodies there and stuff like that. And it's protected by the Department of Energy. So the president and the executive branch really can't get to this as easily as another department.
And wow, there's a lot going on just on this
Yeah.
first page.
Yeah. And you
But
see Oke Shannon's name there. You see Oke Shannon and John
uh-huh.
Klink and Samuel Finch, and they're all from Los Alamos National Laboratory. And the guy that was running it was John Alexander, who was a colonel in the U.S. Army and former Special Forces guy. And he ran it. So he was Los Alamos at the time he ran it. And you'll see three of his buddies here. And this is like a sign-in sheet where they're signing in and they're signing off on the security clearances and stuff like that.
So was this meeting held at Los Alamos, or was it,
No,
or
it's
do we don't know where it was at?
yeah, yeah. You'll see the location. It was the BDM secure facility in McLean, Virginia. I looked. The building is not there. There's some other building. I think it's another BDM building, but it was a secure facility. So it's in the skiff there. So they have a secure intelligence building or whatever they're using it for, and they'll have a skiff in there. So they're using that skiff in the building that's secure from signals and stuff like that.
Yeah. So is it underground or is it above
I'm
ground
not sure where
facility?
the skiff was. I'm imagining like always hear the one with the famous one in the White House is a Situation Room, and if you
Mhm.
remember the story with Will Smith, the actor, when he went in there and with his son, and his son said, "I'm going to ask the president about UFOs." He said, "Don't you dare ask the president! You're going to embarrass me." And they were in the Situation Room, and that's when he said to even before the son said, he said, "I know what you want to talk about. You want to talk about aliens, don't you?" And then the kid said, "Yeah." And his dad went, "What? What are you talking? No, no, no." And he said, if there was a top secret meeting on UFOs, this is exactly where it would have taken place in this room. And then the kid says, "I know it. I knew it. I knew it." And that's like a skiff. That's sort of like the skiff in the White House
Yeah.
where it's all secure, where they all go in there and they can talk about whatever they want and stuff. But it's the idea you can't bring any phones, you can't bring any cameras or anything, so nobody
Yeah.
really knows what goes on in there. And it's all the most secret stuff that they talk about in there. So this
Yeah.
was done in a skip, and you'll see it's an official meeting. So it's Department of Energy. So they can't really say, "Well, we just got together. It was a bunch of guys that were out for beers." There's an official document here, so it
Yeah,
had
it
some
definitely
official capacity.
it definitely puts a frame around the rest of the documents for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So the second slide, what
yeah.
it
This is before GPS. This is just trying to get somebody to figure out where the place is, and they're
all right.
drawing a map. So people who haven't, don't before GPS, that's how we used to do it there.
back in the
Handwritten
old
maps, how to get
back in
there.
the olden days, back in the Stone Age.
Yeah,
I'm
390.
42. I remember that. So
Yeah.
this is just a directions
Outside of
map.
Washington. So there's the famous Beltway around Washington D.C. So
Oh,
this is this looks like it's just on the north side or just outside of Washington
I
D.C. And
95
that's what
stuff.
you would get. A lot of buildings, a lot of government buildings are in Virginia or in Maryland. Not that many. Washington D.C. itself is not a very big place.
Crazy. So that yeah, this is directions to the meeting. Let's move
Yeah. And here's
on.
their agenda. So here's what they were planning to talk about. This is really the only type pages in the whole thing. And you'll say the objective, but the objective is to explore evidence presented. So they're trying to get money. So they're trying to get evidence. If the evidence is sufficient, is there sufficient evidence to support research and development? So this again is the thing. Do we have enough evidence to investigate UFOs? And if so, is there research and technology stuff applications? Because if you don't have that, you're going to lose it because you've got this money and it's like, well, we've been working on UFOs here for 10 years and we think we're going to figure it out someday. And they'll go, that doesn't go anywhere. So they're always looking for this. Does it have any research and development component? Because then you can get money out of somebody for research and development. If it's insufficient, what should the thrust be? Develop an action plan, assuming sufficient evidence to proceed. So the action plan would be what you're going to pitch to the upper guys in the Pentagon or whatever to get your money. And the purpose is to explore evidence of facts, determine quality of known evidence, determine methods to collect the information. And they're basically just going through a thing of how would you run a UFO investigation. There's one interesting one here where they talk about where is it?
The friendly or non-friendly.
Mm, oh, this is not on. It's not on this. Is that on this page?
Oh,
Friendly and
that's
non-friendly.
yeah, that's on the agenda page, I think. Yeah, it's on six, the friendly or non-friendly.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. See, that's that. John even said they had to put, they put that in there. The old idea that there's got to be some sort of threat because there isn't a threat. Well, then what? Who cares?
yeah, why are we
Government
doing
always
it?
works on a threat, something that they fear is going to happen, or after the thing, like a situation in Florida. They're after the fact. They're there to try to clean up and that sort of stuff. But they really don't anticipate anything very well or work on anything until there's a real problem going, and then they sort of get going. But
Yeah.
you'll see, there's one thing that said keep it legal. I thought it was on this page, but maybe it's on another page. But that was kind of a funny thing. It was like one of the rules is let's keep legal. Let's do legal stuff. It's like, okay. So recommendations, actions, report, what next? So they what they wanted is there enough evidence, and then they were going to go to higher level people and try to get somebody to fund this thing. Same as what's going on now. That's what Elizondo and Mellon and these guys are doing. They're giving these briefings in front of Congress to
Mhm.
try to, I say, put the fear of God into Congress that they got to look at this or it's the end of the world is coming. And then they say, okay, this is an important problem and we'll give you $5 billion and you can have 500 people working under you or whatever. And that's what they're basically working on. And that's what they're pushing in Congress right now is to get an office, get them to take it as a response, a serious threat and spend some money. And then everybody's got jobs and this sort of thing
Mhm.
because there is even the rumor now, and it was discussed on Jimmy Church, and he sort of disputed, but the idea that it's almost like every military agency has their own thing. It's like Navy has their own Air Force, and there's all these spreadovers where they overlap each other in different projects that they do. And you can see that the new Space Command, it would make sense that the Space Command would have an organization that looks outwards for outside threats. And that's the story that came down is the UAP threat identification place inside the new Space Command. Elizondo's running it. And he said, no, they're not. And I got a pretty good source to say, yeah, he is. And it would make sense. Like, I mean, if you're going to have a space command and you're going to say we're going to take threats in space, who would be the guy that would know most about threats coming in from outside into the atmosphere? So that was one of the disputes we had the other night as to whether Elizondo is actually this big shot with Space Command now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about the man to speak on him.
Yeah,
I've never spoke to him personally, and I usually don't really. That's when I get to know someone. But
yeah,
yeah, who knows? But
yeah.
yeah, let's
He
keep.
would qualify for the job. If I
It
were
definitely. I
if I were
mean,
the guy, I'd hire him.
if there would be one person that I could think of, I mean, I'm sure there's other people that's we don't even know about. But
Yeah,
yeah, but anyone, whoever's the person out in the public that would be it, I would think it would be him.
yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. So the next one, this is the fourth slide is when we the fourth page is when we start getting into the good stuff.
Yeah. And the point that people should realize here, because I've been in this so long that I sort of understand that um, things aren't. We always think things are the same today as they always were, and that's not true. So this 1985, and the remote viewing program does not become public until 1995, till 10 years after that. In 1985, this was a highly classified secret inside the U.S. government. It was the fact they were using remote viewing. So Hal Puthoff comes into this top secret. Hal Puthoff ran the program with Russell Targ, and they ran it, and I think until '88, Hal Puthoff left and went into running this institute that he has, this advanced institute. And he goes in '85 on this top secret remote viewing program, and he gives a briefing to everybody. So you see, that's one of the topics they have. So they bounce from topic to topic. You'll see on the notes here. So Hal
Mm-hmm.
comes in, he's talking about this magnetic field that seems to be associated with the saucers. So I've actually asked Bob McGuire to sort of give a report that he's going to talk about this. That there's actually a signal that they can actually pick up, which sort of agrees with some of the stories, like the story that um, Will Miller tells. Um, he was the advisor to Stephen Greer. He tells a story about being invited into the NORAD, the mountain at NORAD, and there was this panel of all sorts of things that the government can get detect. And he said, "Oh, let's take a look at the planes." And the lieutenant colonel pushes this button and you can see all the planes going into New York, all different this flights and who owned the flights and stuff like that. And then button 54 was UFOs. He said, "Hey, push the UFO button. Let's see what they're picking up on UFOs." And the guy pushed the UFO button and it came across the screen. Access denied. And this guy supposedly had the clearance. But that's the idea. If that was, and he indicated that happened in the 1990s, 1980s. So if they have that technology where they can just push a button in NORAD and they're tracking all the UFOs, what are we doing now? We're talking about, oh, we got to get sensing, like on this thing. You need all these sensing devices, and we're going to, do all this kind of stuff to pick them up. And it looks like NORAD has got it all figured out already, and they got button 54 that you push, and if you got the clearances, it'll tell you exactly what's flying around.
That's crazy. How long do you think that's been going on?
I don't know. Well, Will Miller, it's kind of surprising, and he's like a high level guy. So when he tells the story, he tells it like it's, you'd think like, wow. I mean, that's a pretty wild story that they have a button that they can just push where they track the stuff. But he told just like it was just a story from yesterday. He's got all these stories, and he was actually hired, by Stephen Greer, and then these guys were trying to hire him. So the group that was, I guess, behind it, because. Eric Davis in this time had left, so they were trying to get Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis were always trying to figure this thing out, and so they were uh, doing this thing where they got the detection stuff and trying to sell it to the government or whoever would. And I assume that they got hired by various people because you can see here that they seem to know something. But I think the end of the result of all these meetings, they were talking about this high level stuff, like this top secret remote viewing stuff. In the end, they sort of came to the conclusion that I've come to, and maybe you've come to, is yeah, something's going on. But beyond that, the universe is so complex that we haven't got a clue. We think we know what they're doing, but it's probably going to be completely different than what we think. And
It's
that's the whole key, is that the universe just gets more complex the more you look at it.
yeah, it's constantly evolving. Even if we were to if even if someone were to figure it out at that moment, the universe would shift a little bit because I don't think it's ever meant to fully understand. Like
Yeah.
I think that's
All,
why we're here
Although
is to
one
figure
of
all
the
this
things that
out.
experiencers always tell me, and the figure was the free survey did the survey of 3,000 experiences, and 40% of them said at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And the thing with that is that's 40%, and then 20% knew everything about themselves through history. And if you look at the near-death experience research, it shows that 31% say at one point during their near-death experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And I've had these people, and I've said, "Okay, you knew everything," and they said, "Yep." And then I said, "Well, how do you know they didn't tell you like number 6, 7, 8 on the far side of the universe? They forgot to tell you about." And they'll all say what I have because I had that sort of download experience about consciousness, and they'll all say the same thing. I really don't know. I'm really not sure. I just know. And it's like this, and they knew that they knew everything. And as they were coming back in, they said they're going to remember, and it all just sort of faded away. And that comes to this idea that there's a field out there where everything's in the field, and you can dissociate whether you're using ayahuasca or you're using meditation or hypnosis, or you can dissociate, or through trauma, through an accident or something, you can dissociate. You can go into that field that has sort of everything there. There's no time, there's no space. It all gets mixed up, and you can grab what you have and you come back. Because I know I always tell the people that my experience was pretty simple. Watching this lecture in Phoenix, Arizona, or Laughlin, either Phoenix or Laughlin. I'd have to check back where it was. It may have been in Laughlin, Nevada, but I know that when that thing happened, this idea of consciousness came to me, and it definitely was a situation where I knew, and it was like, you can say all you want. You can tell me everything you want. I know for a fact that that was real, and that was the hardest part. It was almost like you knew everything. Say when you're out of body and you're in your real environment and you're moving around, you sort of know everything, and then when you come in here, you forget everything. But then you get this little piece of enlightenment, and you go there, and you suddenly, oh yeah, because you've seen it before, you know it, and you recognize it, and it comes with this certainty. That was the thing that was the weirdest part, was this certainty, almost like I'd seen it before, I'd been told it before. It was like, oh yeah, and it was like, that's how it works. It was definitely, and it changed my whole life. I had the UFO sighting, but the experience in 2012 with the consciousness thing, where I got this sort of message that this is all consciousness, was it just completely set me going on a totally different train. I was like I realized I was not only on the wrong train, I was on the wrong track. I was going in the wrong direction, and I got off, and I started to do this thing with consciousness. This whole idea. At first, I thought it was consciousness. Then I realized it was non-local consciousness, and then I knew it was this field. And it gets more and more complex as you go along as to what this actually is. And in the end, I sort of come to the conclusion that whatever this phenomena is, it's in that field. And so it's like a radio tuner, that we're on one station, they're on another station, and they can come into our environment because they can change, they know how to change the station. They can come in, and then they can go back into their environment. And so to me, it would all be all the spirits, all the anything that's non-physical, that's interacting with us, is in this sort of field, and they know more than we do. So if a person who's an experiencer is shown the answer to everything in the universe, then whoever is showed it to them on board the ship, they would know all that stuff too. So it's not that they're coming here to learn stuff. They're coming here to be altruistic. They're trying to sort of move the thing towards a positive universe, to the word, the universe getting bigger and more magnificent, rather than saying it's my nation, it's my country, it's my state, it's my property, and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. Where you get into this thing where we're raping and pillaging the world, and they're not here to help us do that. They help us to turn it around, to make the universe a much grander, cleaner, and more magnificent environment. And other people now, it's more the thing about, we're here to take whatever we can. We're only here one time. There's no God. We really don't care. And so it's rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Whoever's got the most toys when they die wins.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we're definitely on the same wavelength on that, and I had the same experience. My oneness experience when
Yeah,
I went into source, and the biggest thing that I come out of that was everything is divinity. Like
yeah,
every moment, every single molecule, and every single moment, every single vibration
yeah,
of everything is all divine. It's all
yeah,
divine timing at all
yeah,
times. It's all
yeah,
perfect. So
yeah,
you have to shift your mindset into that and get behind that idea that everything is perfect,
yeah.
and you start to see it after a while. But it's easier said than done for sure. But
Yeah, well, I mean, that, and a lot of people like John Lennon did a lot of mind altering stuff, and he came up with the expression, everything will work out in the end. If it's not working out, it's not the end. And when I saw some of the lyrics, then I got, like, once I did the thing with psilocybin, where I did the experiment with 25 doses, and
the
that's the
John
sort of
Hop
express.
the
I got
John
the same
Hopkins
messages.
the
What's that?
protocol, the John Hopkins protocol.
Yeah, I used the John Hopkins protocol. Tried to stay
Yeah.
as close to it as possible. And the first bunch of them, I actually taped them. They're actually pretty interesting because I was actually taping as the whole thing was going on. I got a tape recorder and stuff. And but the only problem there, and
That'd
I
be a good
found I
movie. That'd be a good movie.
yeah, there was some interesting stuff. I've forgotten most of it. I did get messages, but I went in with the protocol, and I basically sort of learned the main message. I guess the oneness message I got as well, and it's unique to feel that it's not just an idea, an intellectual idea. It's a feeling. It's emotion. It's all that kind of stuff. The
Yeah,
one I
it's
had was the whole idea of surrender, which you
uh
get in near death experiences. People who fight near death experiences, or people who fight psychological experiences when you're fighting it, and then you sort of create your own experience, and that's what I found is this idea that particularly on the one type of mushroom that I was using, that I have these absolutely horrendous entries. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. It's like this. I would describe it as hell because I was in it, and I remember the one time I think I was on tape and I was describing it, and it was like, and the weird thing was that whatever's behind it, the intelligence behind it, you're in it, and it's the worst thing you can possibly think of. It's like a hell. I mean, like not fire and brimstone, but it's just like an uncomfortable feeling, or it's like just horrible. And they make you feel like this is it. This is going to go on forever. And so I would go in thinking to myself, okay, they're going to do this thing, be prepared. It's going to be 5 minutes. You're going to be out of it and stuff like that. And you would always forget that. So you'd go into the experience and it would be like, oh my God. And then I'd say, okay, I did this. I got nobody else to blame. This is what eternity is going to be like. And I actually surrendered to eternity, to the fact that I would live in hell for eternity. And I had brought it on myself and stuff like that. And as soon as I surrendered, it was instantly I was in the light. And I was on the other side of the thing. I was flipped over, and all the beauty and the compassion and all these different things that they taught me. But the thing was this surrender thing. So what I put at the beginning of the book, because I you had the oneness, which I got too, but I had the main message I was getting was surrender is the rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule. And that comes
yeah.
down to this old idea how we live. I mean, do you live through ego, or do you, and once you surrender, then to the fact that you are part of another system, and everything sort of changes for you, but you've got to go through that. As long as you are the ego that's fighting the whole thing about me, I, this sort of stuff, it blocks that thing, and the ego will take you to hell. And that's the whole point. It's all about me. It's all about I. And when you get to the other side, it becomes all about the one. We are all one. We're all connected.
Mhm.
Almost like the ayahuasca story with Sting, the famous musician. Have you seen that one? It's kind of a
Uh,
funny interview he's talking about how it was, and I guess because he was this famous musician who'd sold millions of albums or whatever, the somehow the people in the they were running the thing knew it, and the head guy says, okay, so who's Sting? Because a bunch of them came in, and he said, oh, that would be me. He said, oh, we got special one for you. And they gave him like twice as much as everybody else. And he talks about this fact that he was, yeah, I guess he was having a bad time throwing up or whatever. And he went to the head guy, and he said, yeah, I got to get out of this. I mean, you got to get me out of this, please, please. And the guy, sort of did this, whatever he did, and then gave him some more and made him drink some more. And when he finally got it, he talked about this thing. He suddenly realized everything was alive, everything was conscious, and everything was one, which is the key thing. And then he looked down at this little flower growing out of a crack, and he said, "That's my brother." And it was from this very famous
oh.
musician to tell this story about what it was like. And he's telling, how people tell the story, just straight faced, like it's like just happened, like
Yeah.
nothing out of the ordinary. And it was really interesting to hear him tell the story about the oneness. And that's what people will get. That's, I would say, is the number one message of the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon, is this oneness idea. You have to realize you're all one. That unless you do that, you're gone. You've got to work together. Almost this idea like, how does someone win a Super Bowl? How does someone win whatever game you're playing? And it's the team that most coordinates themselves. It's not like you go into the huddle, in the football huddle, and then the guy says, what do you mean block? I'm not going to block. I'm going for a pass. Forget it. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do whatever I want to do. And this sort of thing, where it's the team that does it, or where everybody does exactly what they're supposed to do, almost like a beehive. Like I was walking down the street, and I was kind of amazed because all the leaves are dropping, And I've gotten fascinated the last couple of months with trees. So I'm walking along and there's no wind whatsoever, but this tree, it's just like these leaves are falling off just gently, about maybe 4 or 5 leaves at a time, and they're coming down, and it's almost like they're planned to drop off. And I always watch them during the spring when the little sprouts come out. And then I think, I mean, people actually believe that this is all happening by accident, that these little sprouts know how to come out at the right time, and they're coming out and they're forming leaves. And I didn't realize an ordinary tree, like it's the old idea, like the more you look at the universe, the more complex it gets. So you see a tree and it has these leaves. You go, all the leaves are the same. All the leaves are different. They're completely different. Every single leaf. The leaves on the inside of the trees are is it bigger? Yeah, I think it's bigger than the outside of the tree because they're not getting enough sun, so they make bigger leaves. And they talk about how leaves grow, and it's all like they're taking in signals, and this idea that below the tree there's for this the fibers under one footstep is like 5 miles or something like that under each footstep. It's just amazing, all
The
these branches
mycelium.
going. And that if you get a tree that's in shade, all the trees around it will send it energy and food because it's in shade. And they're all the trees are working together, and they have these mother trees that sort of direct traffic. And we go in there and we clean out all the trees and the mother trees. And that's the thing that they say is the worst part. It's not the trees, it's the mother trees that have all the knowledge for the other trees that help all these other trees. And this idea that all these trees are talking underground, and they're sending, when a tree gets in danger or it's going to die, it sends its carbon to other trees before it dies. And that kind of stuff, when you realize that's going on, you go like, wow. And it's just a simple tree. And that's the whole thing I think that people miss, is this idea that the universe is so much more complex. And that's what I think you should take out of UFOs. It's like, you think you know what's going on, give your head a shake. The more you look at the UFO phenomena, the weirder it gets, the more you realize that things are not as they're supposed to be. But that's the way
Hmm.
you work it in terms of discoveries. What you're trying to do is you're trying to look at the anomalies. So people say, well, I really don't believe that. It doesn't, it doesn't have any proof or whatever. But it's the anomalies, it's the things that don't fit in. Because if we knew what was going on, there would be no UFOs, there would be no ghosts, there would be no paranormal phenomena, because it wouldn't be happening. The reason it's happening is because we got something wrong. We're misunderstanding something in the universe, and we should take our ego away and try to figure out what piece of the puzzle are we missing. And that's where you come down to the experiences of people who are interacting with the phenomena, whatever the phenomena is, and talk to those people, because they're getting spiritual wisdom. They're being given this wisdom as to what it's about and what the message is about. And that's the people you need to listen to, because the message is not about technology. It's not about food. It's not people always want to confuse any phenomena, any paranormal phenomena, with Santa Claus. Oh, they're here to help us. They're here to give us stuff. They're not here to give us stuff. It's not Santa Claus. This is a different thing. They're giving us lessons, which is what I did in the psychedelic thing. All I said is, when I went into the first experience, I said, okay, I'm here. I'm here to go to school. You tell me what I need to know. And the first lesson, and then went in again, second lesson, and at least the first six, I knew within a couple of minutes what the lesson was going to be. And they would have these different ways. Like one was death, which always fascinated me. I had these, that one started. I'm lying in a coffin, and it's as real as can be. I'm lying in this coffin in this giant cathedral, and the light is coming in from the left side, from this side. And most big churches have stained glass windows. So I'm thinking, well, how can this light was very clear. It's like it's coming through a clear glass, and I could see it coming in over the coffin, but there was no light from here. And I'm thinking, like, why is there no light coming through this window? There should be a window on this side. And I'm thinking, this is kind of cool. And it's actually not bad. I'm lying there and I can see the ceiling, and I know I'm in a coffin, even though all I can see is the ceiling. I can't see the coffin, but I seem to know I'm in a coffin. And then it moves to another scene of, and it's this ego death that they always try to put you through. And what they do is
Mm.
trying to do is get you to surrender. And that's where trauma comes in near-death experiences, where you're forced to surrender. You're forced to say, okay, that's it, I've died, I'm moving on, or whatever. And then you see the light or whatever. But there's always that surrender thing, which I think people have expressed, that we say, well, why are there bad near-death experiences? And the people who do them tend to indicate that those are people who can't let go. And if you can't let go, you're going to have a very ugly sort of experience in terms of not surrendering.
That we go over this a lot. The question comes up all the time: is there a bad trip? Because but you have people talking about, is
Yeah,
there bad trips with mushrooms or
yeah,
ayahuasca?
yeah,
I say no,
yeah,
and I also must say, like, I could put you on as a spokesman, like for my wife's new clothing line. She's making this because we've had a mantra for years in our ceremonies. People coming in, and it was given to me by ayahuasca about 3 or 4 years ago as a mantra to tell people, like as they take the medicine, when they sit down, a mantra to just go over there in their head is trust and surrender. So
Wow.
not my wife is making a trust and surrender clothing line where she's making clothing that has trust and surrender on it because it's catching on so much.
Wow,
It's
that's
a
good.
it's about
Absolutely.
it's about trusting the medicine and trusting yourself and surrendering to yourself and the medicine, and it's not
Wow.
surrendering to anything else, just but surrendering to the moment. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. That's it's the same message. That's the thing.
say,
You can get it across the thing that was the message I got was
yeah.
this idea that that's the way you move is you surrender and then because we have the ego that we need in the real world in order to
Hmm.
make money and do all this kind of stuff and figure out our taxes and stuff like that, so you need it, but it basically is there, and when you're trying to surrender, it's talking away, this is stupid, I mean, what are you doing this for, and it's like, and it's trying, and it's like saying to the ego, okay, step aside, I know you're trying to help, you're doing your job, whatever, and we respect that, but we need, Drew needs to do some stuff here. Can you go for coffee for a few hours and come back?
Yeah.
And we got some work to do here. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is you need to get past that and get into this idea that, I mean, the more I look at, I'm writing this whole, I don't know if it's a book or whatever, or maybe I may just write it out, because once I write it out, then I sort of get it in my head. But this whole idea that you surrender, and that this world is much more magnificent than people think it is, much more complex than people think it is, and it's just sort of looking at it and trying to figure out what's this all about. And you and I are on the same thing. And the big message is the oneness. The big message is this idea of surrender, of moving past the ego. That there's something out there that you can tap into, and it's almost like when you die, you if you had ever had Whitley Strieber on, his wife had this expression where he said she came back after she died and she said, Whitley, I am no longer Anne, but I will always be Anne to you. And
Oof.
that's the important thing, is
Oof.
that
Man.
people got to realize they're on a stage, and that I'm not Anne anymore. I'm on another stage, anything, but I was on the stage with you in the play that we played, and thank you for that play. And I'm off to
Wow.
do something else. And people always forget that, because you see sort of the main, a lot of gurus will teach the main thing of spirituality is remember who you actually are, that you are not the actor on the stage, you are playing an actor on the stage. Because you played King Henry VIII in grade 12 does not mean you get to be King Henry VIII for the rest of your life. You are not King Henry VIII. You played him on the stage. Give it up. You're not that. And people keep
So
forgetting that.
true, man.
And
It's
a
so
lot of the
true.
spiritual teachings just try to get you back to that thing, to back to that understand, that feeling of oneness, and then once you tap into it, you realize who you are, and that will dictate more your actions in terms of trying to make it a more beautiful, magnificent place, and do what you can to raise consciousness so other people can do the same thing. And to me, that's what it came down to. My consciousness thing was all consciousness, and our job, if we believe the reincarnation thing, that we've come here to do something, it's always comes down to, why did Drew and Grant come in, what were they intended to do, and what are they doing it. And that's as simple as that. I mean, we must have come in here to something, and we try to figure out what the hell did I agree to, and what am I supposed to be doing. And whatever happens to you, almost like you had this whole thing about the good and the bad, to me it's all good experience. Whatever happens to you, it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with what happens to you. So people
Uh-huh.
will look at good and bad, they just want the good experiences, when in fact you get all the experiences you need, and you're handing yourself the experiences. It's not like there's some outside force who is picking on you or whatever. We do deal with ever, and so everything is relative. So if you lose your job, you say, "Oh, that's terrible," but then someone says, "Hey, that job opened, just that's great." And it's this idea that it's perspective, and that everything is perfect as you explained. And I did a show on that one time. I had three people. I had one guy who was in a float tank. These are all people who dissociated. So they shut down the ego, and they got their mind into the field, and they picked up the same message that you're talking about, this oneness message. And the one guy was in a float tank, the oneness and perfect. So the one guy was in a float tank, and this voice started to come to him in the float tank. First time, he just said you should take care of yourself. Second time he went in the float tank, it got more complex, so the messages and stuff like that. And he was basically given this message that everything is perfect, and he was so embarrassed, like everything. And you think, oh, Hitler and all this kind of stuff. And the guy said, no, everything's perfect. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And he was so embarrassed, he wouldn't even tell his wife. So when I was doing a book on contact modalities, I said, Mark, let me use that story. Come on. And then he started to open up about it. And I found a girl who had a near earth experience. She'd been thrown off a bike. This would be 51 years ago, thrown off a bike head first into the concrete. And she had this near death experience. And she was given this thing as, totally with her face all smashed up or whatever. The message, everything is perfect, is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And how do you figure that out when your face is all smashed up? And it's this experience. I agreed to have this experience or whatever, to learn whatever. And then the third one was a girl who does hypnosis, who was actually just sitting there. She had some family, some personal stuff she was sort of thinking about. She was sitting there reading a book, and suddenly, boom, she was in the field, and she got the message as well. So I put these people on, and when you hear three different people from three different angles, all telling the same story about the fact that it's all perfect, and just work through it and enjoy life, and do what makes you feel good and stuff like that. That in terms of helping people and stuff like that. And all these people were getting it. So I found that so fascinating that when you start to look, it's actually someone could do a book about that. I'm pretty sure you could get people, a lot of people, who would describe being in the field and getting this same message. And once you see people all over the place getting the message, then you go, oh yeah, because it's one thing you got it or I got it, but once you see that everybody's getting the same message, and that's a key. The thing about that, that's how the ride ends. And I'm pretty sure that this comedian must have done some psychedelics, because what he said at the end, it comes down to fear and love, and you
uh,
get to choose. It's fear and love.
oh
And you get
yeah.
off the ride and you realize, and so he's in that thing. So it's a joke, it's all funny or whatever, but in the end he hits with this thing. And that's what it is. It's fear or love. Fear is what drags you back. It's the ego. It's protection of myself, me, or what are you doing to me, me. And the other one is the love, which is the altruistic, almost like the right brain, the female brain, the one that's in the field that says the universe is divine, rejoice, and try to make it a better place, and make it more grand, and let's just keep building and building and building. And so the idea of people would always say to me, I'm not coming back. And I'd say, don't worry, when you get over there, you're going to realize how it works. And you're going to say, okay, I'm coming back again. Why would you
What?
not come back? Like, what do you do?
There's
How long,
no
how many billion years can you sit on
man,
Maui's beach and drink Mai Tais? I mean,
man.
after a
When I
while, it's like summer holidays. It's like, oh, I'm bored, let's get going. And then you get these movies, like the divine creators watching these movies, and he's watching right now the Donald Trump movie on TV and saying, "Wow, that's pretty," on the big screen, and go, "Wow, that's pretty interesting movie." And people got to realize that in your life you want all the good events, but if your movie were to be put on a screen and it's just like everything's good, everything's nice, there's food on the table, whatever, everybody's going to get up 15 minutes and walk out. You need this the trauma and how's this character going to deal with this disaster that's happened or whatever. And that's what it is. All movies are the same. You have to have that up and down like the roller coaster. Otherwise,
hmm.
people don't sit on the edge of the seat. Not only do they not do that, they leave the theater because they don't. It's boring. They don't want to see that.
I tell everybody when I went into my oneness moment, I gave up my form and become source, and there was nobody there. There was
Yeah.
nobody in the waiting room, and
Wow.
when I left, there was nobody in the waiting room, and I realized like because before I walked in, I was like, man, I've been waiting for this for at that time I had in mind, I was like thousands of lifetimes. I've been waiting on this moment, to go back to source. As soon as I went in, I was like, oh, this is why no one's here. Like, because there's nothing to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's watching the most boring sitcom in the world. But I want to. So we're gonna. I want to get back to these notes real quick,
Okay.
because I got the person that knows about them on here. So this next one, um, this is just cases, reports.
Bob, there's one there. There's an interesting one in the middle there. Reports. So there. This is not the. I've gotten other notes that I got into a lot of trouble for leaking, and the one is Bob W. It's Bob Woods McDonnell Douglas study. So what happened was in 1967. Bob Wood went to the CEO of McDonnell Douglas, or I think it was just Douglas Aircraft at the time, and he said, "Here's what's going to happen: we're going to figure out the UFO thing, or Boeing's going to figure it out." And I think we should take some time with engineers to see if we can figure out what's going on here and how to get propulsion so we can get ahead before Boeing gets the patent. And the guy said, "Okay, I'll give you $500,000." So in 1967, Douglas Aircraft spent $500,000 to do a UFO study. Most people don't know that. The only reason they know that is because they were doing regressions, hypnotic regressions on the people. And that made sense. You got somebody who's been on a craft. Well, you ask them, well, what are the aliens to show you the craft? They show you the engine. I mean, how do they get here, and how does it work, and all these kind of questions. So they were doing these regressions. The guy who was doing the regressions dies. I think he lived in Washington State. He dies, and the files, all the files for the whole project, were in a barn. And the person that bought the barn found these documents, UFO documents about this UFO study being done at Douglas Aircraft. Said, "Oh, I got $1,000,000 here." Put it on eBay, sold it for $29. The guy who bought it contacted me, and I said, "Well, we should get these out. Get them out." So they're on a website called Check the Evidence. It's in Great Britain. A friend of mine runs it, a computer guy. It's called Check the Evidence, and you'll see 250 pages on a study that was done by Douglas Aircraft on UFOs, on abductees, on the whole thing, looking at this sort of stuff. Came to the same conclusion everybody comes to: UFOs exist, and beyond that, we haven't got a clue what's going on. This is so complex. And he ran that study, and then these notes came to me, so I said I'll put them out. And then once I put them out, there was a little bit of controversy for the first couple of days they went out there, and Bob Wood contacted me. And he was furious. "How do you get my notes? This thing was not supposed to be released. It was a private study," all this sort of stuff. And I said, "Oh, so and so, he died, and he left him in a barn, and some guy sold him on eBay and they gave him to me." And he went, "Oh, okay." So that was the end of that. But the documents are out, and that's the thing. People want to keep this sort of stuff secret, and to me, it's like, put it out there. I even got the one which we can maybe talk about down the road, but I actually got a study that was done for President Lyndon Johnson. Somebody was going to write a book on it, and his niece, when he died, she looked through all this material and they didn't know what to do with it. So they contacted me, and I've got maybe half the stuff. And it talks about a study done for the president of the United States. It was the same thing. Yeah, UFOs exist. They're flying around, and we haven't got a clue what they're doing. I mean, they have no idea. It's so advanced. And it's always the same sort of report. So now people will say, "Oh, the government's covering up. They know what's going on." And I'm going, I wouldn't be too sure. I've seen enough reports where these top secret reports where they talk about, even the Wilson leak documents that these talk about. These are Oke Shannon's notes, but the Wilson leak document from the head of intelligence for Joint Chiefs of Staff, at the very end, it talks about the fact that we've got a craft and we think we can fly it. And as soon as I heard that, I went, "Oh, I know what's going on. They got a craft that's completely intact and they can't fly it. And the reason they can't fly it is because you need a consciousness interface to get it to take off. There is no start button. You need to put your hand on a panel, and you got to be the right person. It's like your cell phone where you put your face print or your fingerprint or whatever to unlock it. And so that's the whole thing. UFOs are run by consciousness. I've interviewed these 36 people in this book coming out called UFO Sky Pilots, and they all tell you the same thing. You put your hand on a panel. You become one with the craft. You and the craft are one. Whatever you think is what the craft does, and the craft is alive. It's talking to you. It's alive. And whatever you think. So the one guy said, they asked him, "What would you like to do?" He said, "I'd like to see the Milky Way from a distance." And he said, "That'll be 1 second of intense G-force. Hang on." And he was sitting in a chair, and he said it was intense G-force. And he said they looked out the window, and there was the Milky Way off in the distance. And so that's like 50 or 100,000 light years in 1 second. And that was done with the mind. It's like you got to think about, where do you want to go? You're in the field, and so all the people say the same thing. You can do whatever you want. You can go as fast. It's almost like a out of body experience or a lucid dream. You control it. Everything's alive, and you're the one that's controlling the environment. Or even like the idea that near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and dreams and stuff are created by us. It's all emotion. It's we're going through a process. Or like, why do people see one type of alien? There was even a discussion that John Mack, before he died, talked about, that people who see gray aliens are still in fear. And then once that gets by, then suddenly, like Chris Blutzer, you start seeing energy beings, because you see the spiritual aspect of it. So those spiritual people see energy beings. Grays will be seen by people in fear. People who are very sort of sexually driven or very lot of energy we'll see reptilians, and John Mack started to come to this idea that the being that you saw determined, your emotional, that you were interesting, and that's the whole idea that I came to, was that there is only consciousness. Consciousness is primary, and we are the consciousness, and we are the ones. God did not create the heaven and the earth. We created the heaven and the earth. It's done through consciousness. We're building it more and more complex as entities of the one, and we're building it. And it's all one thing. There is no separation. It's not like matter brings out that we can create matter, we can create all sorts of stuff.
I
So in our
saw
experiences, we create our experiences. We have to take credit for what's happening in our experience, that we are part of that. It's not like we get thrown into an out of body experience and some being is inflicting this upon us. We are part of the process, whatever we are seeing.
it's so true. I talk about one of the epiphanies that I had. I got to uh, this in meditation without any plant medicine or anything. Just a normal
Yeah.
meditation. I got to see our solar system, and it showed my relation to the solar system. It showed each of the planets being a chakra point, and it showed the Earth being the heart chakra of our solar system.
Wow.
So it showed the chakra system, or energy points, or the Merkaba is the grid system and the basis behind all form. And if you take it down past that, everything that we're seeing is a reflection of that. We keep manifesting all these different things, so we don't forget. And so it's crazy. I definitely agree with you. So on this, so the reports, I don't see anything. Unless you have anything else on the
No, they're
page
just.
five.
I mean, they're just again looking for data, and this one, thoughts on Wednesday's process. Where do we want to be? This is this whole idea about Wednesday. They're trying to get through these different subject action items. How do we proceed? It was always the thing about what do we do, or we're going to go for money, or who we're going to contact, or whatever. They're using magnetometers. You see a lot of this stuff is sort of old. Um,
Yeah, thinking that they need they're looking for what type of
yeah.
what type of hardware to use. It looks like.
Yeah, or they're talking about what cases can they use to make the case. They're talking about this Iran case. This is the one with the F-4 jet fighter that tries to lock on and shoot down a UFO over Iran.
What? Oh yeah, this. Oh yeah, we're looking down in the middle of the page.
Yeah, it's in the middle. That's the ace. So they're looking at what cases. So they're looking at that one where the UFO shuts the jet down and he can't do anything. And then technical observers. So they're looking with people who are military for it, because that's good evidence. They're trying to find out what's the best evidence, and multiple sensors. So again, they're trying to get sensors to pick it up so they can register it. The tracks by the Soviets, and McDonnell Douglas analysis of gun system shutdown. And that was the one with the Iranian jet. But what you see is it's old cases, because they leave out. Now we've got the shutdown of the missiles at Malmstrom. We've got a lot of cases we know about now that would be brought up as best evidence in terms of how do we
Right.
sell this thing.
But this is back in the 80s.
Yeah.
What is this Australia and all? This is one thing I had in question. Are these different cases as well?
No, this is Ed Dames. Now, Ed Dames was kind of a questionable character. He came in, I guess he was part of it, or he gave a briefing. I'm not sure whether he just came in and gave a briefing and then left and didn't know what they were doing. Because that's the thing. People can come into this, give a briefing, and then walk out and have no idea what these guys are doing. You just put your little thing in there. So they talk about this. There's 4 different bases. There's always these rumors about the aliens have 4 bases. One is this Mount Zeal in Australia, this mountain in Zimbabwe, Perdido in Spain, and Mount Hayes in Australia. So there's these rumors and that the Mount Hayes has these UFOs coming and going, but this was something that Ed Dames put out. So I would take it with a grain of salt, but that is a major rumor that there are these 4 bases, and I think the remote viewers saw them as well. The remote viewers were underground, and the beings saw them, and they were frightened that these grays had seen them, and that they didn't want to go in again, do any more remote viewing. But this is the top part. It's about these 4 bases. So they're looking at this stuff, and it's not that they believe this stuff. You got 20 guys in there, and they're throwing all this sort of spaghetti against the wall, and people are looking
Uh-huh.
at it and trying to figure out, oh, okay, we don't want to talk about this. Leave this alone. They're just looking with other guys, or maybe guys have got something to add. Oh, I know about this, and I know about this, and people will add stuff to it. So that's what that's about. And again, it's this 150,000 gauze field that Bob McGuire was talking about. I was asking him to explain that. So they have these fields that they know are associated with UFOs. So it's not that they're totally stupid. I guess they've gotten a register by pointing a magnetometer at it or whatever. Somebody got a military sighting or whatever. So they've registered, and you can see at the bottom this 3G signal. So you can see they're speculating with different stuff and different signals that they're picking up from these UFOs, which would lead to going into the government and saying, okay, we got this evidence, we got that evidence, we need more sensors, we need to confirm this kind of stuff. And that may lead us to some technology, or to make the military safer to be in and get less people killed, and do drones or whatever they want to. You got to find a way to signal it. So they're putting out this evidence that we've got actual signals that we can actually measure is something that in Congress they can look at and say, well, they've actually got something. It's not just people seeing stuff and writing reports.
Uh-huh. So that's a repeat of that one. And now we're the 10th
Here again, you
one.
see this old stuff. So Don Kemble, he's from McDonnell Douglas, I believe, and he was given the ET thing. But you can see this thing. They're talking about going at the speed of light, the lifetime of an ET, multi-generational travel, sensor animation, staging, stations. And this is his idea. We got a staging. So you have a place on the moon, and we launch the moon, and then the moon can shoot it out from there. And it's this old idea of how we're going to travel from one star system to another. Like they say, multi-generational. So you and then your kids will take over the spaceship after you die, and they'll have kids, and then those kids will take over, and you need like 12 generations to get there. That's old thinking. We now more understand that these things are coming out of different dimensions or different fields, or they're coming out of the field itself, or they're just manifesting. However, it's more complex than we're flying through space. And you'll see that very often in terms of sightings. People will describe the thing just appeared and then disappeared. And it's almost like the story I always tell people to understand what may be going on here is to look at the case of a physical medium with Leslie Kane. I don't know if you know the story about the hand. So I interviewed Leslie Kane, and the other interviewer wanted to ask questions about this and that, whatever. I just wanted to ask one question. Leslie, tell me about the hand. That actually happened, Melinda. And this happened in a physical seance that was being held by Stuart Alexander. So Leslie Kane was looking at life after death. She had done the TV series, and she'd written the book and stuff like that. So she was dealing with this uh, James st- st- and no st- anyway, this physical medium, and he's sort of locked in the cabinet on the other side of the room. She's sitting at this table with the red light on this little tiny table, and then this sort of a watery, misty sort of stuff starts coming up on top of the table, and it moves on top of the table, and it comes towards her, and then it gets bigger, and this arm and this hand start to appear right in front of her, and she's looking at this thing appearing, and it appears into physical. So it comes into the physical, because she touched the hand. She said, I touched the hand. I shook the hand. She
Whoa.
said it was a real hand. It was real. She said I could feel the tendons, I could feel the muscles, I could feel the bones, I could feel everything, and it was warm, and it was softer than a hand. It was almost soft like a baby's hand, and she's touching this hand, and then the hand, she takes her hand away, and the hand bangs on the table a couple times, and then it just goes, and it goes back into this sort of misty stuff that goes down under the table, and the hand is gone. And that's what I say, is to understand that the idea of them coming in, flying through time and space, taking 12 generations, that's probably not. It's probably more like the hand. It's probably
Yeah.
like they can come in, change their vibration, form into a UFO, into an alien. Because the one guy that I interviewed, that I don't know if you've ever interviewed, UC Ronan, who wrote a book called One. The book is called One. The message is one, and he's an
Oh yeah.
Israeli
Oh yeah.
Israeli
I
experiencist.
know him. I've been wanting to get him on. Yeah,
Yeah, he's good, and you see the message that he got, and this idea that we can come into your world as whatever we want. We do
mhm.
not need as a body to come into your universe, but we choose to come in according to whatever we want and appears whatever we want. We have to be to interact with you in your world, and then we can leave. And you can do the same thing. You just don't know it. And this whole idea. Or the one time, another funny story was I interviewed this it was called they called themselves the beings, and they talked about the one as well. That everything is one thing. It's all an illusion. It's Maya. All this kind of stuff. Enjoy your life. This sort of stuff. And I asked them. I said, they because they appeared to these this woman as like beings, but they were black and they had big huge heads and they had these little tiny feet and these little arms and they had no face. They were completely black, just black from top to bottom. And both of them, and they called themselves Chan, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and because they just said we're just made out of that stuff and we're nothing. We don't have any faces. There's no ego. It's like we don't have any ego. We're all part of the one. And so they come in and so I had got a chance. They said they wanted me to talk. They want to talk to me. So I said, great. So I went there and it's like, well, what question? And I said, are you actually an ET? And then they said, would you like us to be an ET? We could do that if you want. We could actually take you to our planet. But no, we're not ETs. We're here. We've always been here. You're the visitor. And it was that idea of the where I was talking about time and space. Is time and space an illusion, something we make up? If time and space is something that we're making up, then how big is the universe? And then you get to this whole thing like Stephen Greer, if you've ever heard the expression, the Sufi expression, which sums it all up. You think yourself a puny being when within you the entire universe is enfolded. And that's this idea everything is inside you. So when you do a remote viewing and you do that stuff, you go inside yourself. You don't go anywhere because there is no out there. Out there, there's just one thing. There's you. There's your, and you go inside. And out of body experience people will tell the same thing that you're going inside. You're actually going inside your consciousness, so that when you leave you leave your body, you look back at your brain and you think, oh, my brain is thinking, my brain is talking, whatever. And then you go, no, I can see my head. It's down on the bed. I'm up here, which means my brain and my consciousness, that little ego, is in my consciousness. And then the consciousness can turn around, look out the window, and see all the stars and planets, and all the stars and planets are inside the consciousness. And it's this concept of understanding
Mhm.
that it's all one thing, and we are the creation, we are the universe, and that we are, it's inside us. Everything that comes inside us is interpreted by us, and we always want to be the victims, that there's something out there that's attacking us and going against us and stuff like that, instead of realizing we control the strings. We are the ones that are playing the whole thing. Or as the channeler Seth, I don't know if you recall, was probably the one that got the New Age movement going, was the channeling of Seth. And Seth says, you create what happens around you. There is no other rule. And when you start looking at, and that's where people got to make this shift away from the worldview that we see to this
Mhm.
worldview of the fact that it's all consciousness. It's all inside.
Mhm.
It's almost like the 1492. You think the world is flat. It's not. You think the sun, it looks like the sun's going around, but it's not. And you think everything's solid, and it's not. And you more and more you go along, you realize this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. And that's the attitude you got to take to investigate UFOs. Because if you suddenly get stuck at one point and think, okay, this is the end of it, and I understand, you don't. You're back in a world where 100 years from now, your great grandkids are going to laugh and say, I can't believe that you actually believe that. I mean, holy cow. I mean, these people were stupid back then. Because it's a process of unfolding, of
Mhm.
remembering, of getting this and making this universe more magnificent and more understanding. There's more intelligence. The universe is getting more intelligent. All this thought and intelligence is going in there, and it becomes like a bigger and bigger and more magnificent play. And it's like
Mhm.
glory be to the creator for this unbelievable, especially when you see the latest stuff from the telescopes. You start to realize, like, holy cow. I remember I remind people, because people say, oh, no, we've sort of figured out, we it's the end of the road. Everybody thinks it's the end of the road. UFOs, we just need one more piece of the puzzle. We'll put that piece of the puzzle in there and we got it all figured out. And I say, do you realize in 1925, everybody, including Albert Einstein and Bohr and Schrodinger and all these Nobel guys that created quantum physics, everybody believed there was only one galaxy. And when Hubble came up and said there was a second one, Andromeda Galaxy, there was a big debate that took place in 1925, famous debate that took place between Shockley and Hubble about is there more than one galaxy? And Shockley was saying, no, no, it's not a galaxy. It's just a cloud of dust inside the Milky Way. There is only one galaxy. And people don't realize it's 1925. And then they said, oh, there's 100 million galaxies. And then one day they suddenly changed and said, oh, we made a mistake. It's actually 2 trillion. It's like they're out by 2,000%. They go, and it's like just changing news. It's like, oh, we just found out there's not 100 million, there's 2 trillion galaxies, and it just gets bigger and more elaborate and more complex. And there's more things they don't understand. Like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And that's what it's all about. People have no clue that you have to have this surrender and realize that you really are just here with very limited information, and you're here to learn, and you're here to be a student rather than somebody who's thinking they've got it all figured out. We all have an awful lot to learn, and the more you look at the universe, the more unbelievable and complex and magnificent it becomes.
So well said. The back of my first book, it talks about my first channeling from source. It says, I am the creator. I am the source of all creation. You are the creator through the power of manifestation.
Wow.
Step back into your power to facilitate the upcoming evolutionary shift. And that was about 2 or 3 years ago from source. After channeling Archangel Michael and all these other entities. And finally I was like, okay, this all sounds the same. And that's when source came through and gave me that and to deliver. But the last time I had you on, we spoke about a few months ago. I talk about the trifecta of existence, the understanding of oneness, but still walking on two legs.
Yeah.
And that's the balance, So, a lot of people see the truth, and that's all they want to do. They want to go into ceremony. They want to go back into it, but they don't understand the message is to bring that reality and understand that reality is around you all the time.
Yeah.
That truth, that peace that you see, that sovereignty that you get a glimpse of for that split second moment, that is the true reality in all moments.
Yeah.
But
and it reflects to other people rather than lecturing to them. If they can see the truth through your actions, through my actions, you may change them. But in the end, I one of the things I've done is not so much trying to change people, because I've spent, and I make the joke about Stanton Friedman, spent 61 years doing UFOs. He fought with every single skeptic that ever came along and had all these major debates and would say there's 80% of the 80% of the people in the audience said I won. And in the end, he didn't convince any of those people of anything because they had their mindset. And that's where I think it comes more like to an individual thing, that you and I are here to learn our lessons, and we are to do this. And part of it is to bring it out to the world to raise consciousness. But in terms of the major thing is us figuring out for ourselves and trying to remember and getting that information from source and getting people familiar, because more and more people are getting familiar. If you take a look at, 50 years ago, there was nobody talking about New Age or any of this kind of stuff, or these concepts about oneness and love is superior. That is all really been hammered through by source people tapping into source channeling. Everybody's getting the same message, and it gets out there, and we don't think it's going to work, but it's almost like anything else, where it gets to a point where it gets that balancing point and it flips, and everybody just goes, yeah, okay. Or even kids now, if you ask kids today about concepts about outer space and other intelligence and stuff, they're going to go, well, of course. I mean, who's stupid? I mean, they accept it, and that's what Max Planck, who is the father of quantum physics, said. You cannot convince your opponent of the truth by arguing with them. As science advances, and I say ufology the same way, everything advances one funeral at a time. That the old people die off and the new generation is not offended with the idea. And so that's what we do, is we put the idea out there and just realize that it's going to vibrate out there, and the more people are going to put it out, and you're raising this consciousness thing that we can actually move the needle just by thinking, and then it's going to flip, and then we start moving in the other direction. And even the idea that we have complex problems now, if we realize it, we can do one thing. There's even in the Bible, it talks about that. Are you going to curse it, or are you going to do something about it? I mean, it really doesn't help to curse the bad thing that's happened and blame other people for it. It's what can we do to shift that around, that we are always going to be servants rather than, the other, be served upon once we have the truth. If you don't have the truth, then you want to be served upon.
I totally agree. Oh, so this
Let me see
11.
here.
Let me
Hang on,
see.
let me check this. Got to get
This
my
is
glasses here.
from Lieutenant Colonel Mike Neary.
Oh yeah, this is the guy with the phone. This is kind of interesting. It was sort of like a discussion that these guys were having. And So Neary is a lieutenant colonel, and he gets these UFO photographs, and it's against a rotating star background. So somehow he's got these photographs, and he thinks they're really significant. Nobody, I guess, in the Air Force or somebody he was showing them to his superiors were interested, so he stored them in the bottom drawer of his safe drawer. So if you got security clearances, you have a safe drawer. So you lose your job just by leaving a classified document on the desk. You always have to file everything, and everything's got numbers on it and stuff. So he puts it in his safe drawer, and then he says when he gets transferred out, he goes to get this UFO photograph to take with him, and it's gone. And he said the only people that had a key to his desk were his boss and his secretary, but somebody managed to get the UFO photograph out
Mm.
and keep it. And then this next guy, Ed Spearman, or whatever, says, are we led to the conclusion that an organization exists which sucks up all this material into a box? So the whole idea is he's saying he trusts this guy. He says, well, if it got out of your classified safe, is there an organization? Because that's what they're trying to figure out. Is there somebody who's actually running this program? Is there somebody who's covering up the program? And they were trying to figure out who's running the program, who's in charge, so they can
That's
find out
a
and get some money.
that's a more secretive organization that they're talking to.
Yeah, so there would be somebody above them, and that's what this Ed guy says. Are we to believe there's somebody above us who's in control of this thing, getting all this material? And then the other guy says, I think you can believe that. He says, yeah, I think you can believe that. And you see, these guys are concluding that there is some organization. And then Hal McConnell. Now, Hal McConnell was the NSA guy, and that was the New York Times said that the leak came from the NSA. So it may have been Hal McConnell who leaked the story to the New York Times and told him what was going on. But he had an associate. He had an associate who knew of a man who got out of the Air Force and joined an organization. So it wasn't Air Force; it was separate from the Air Force, which collected and burned such items. They get photographs out of military security safes and destroy them, and briefed on a case which sat down next to a silo. Oh, this is an object that by a nuclear missile silo, and the aircraft saw nothing. So they're talking about the nuclear missiles. That's the only time they really talk about it, even though it was known sort of before that. Um, Ed Dames, but Ed Dames, I'm not sure if I really believe. They're going through the basic cases. They're going to put off um, on a subject put off was doing the Hill abduction, which is like the first abduction. Until now, we know that Nancy Tremaine was the first abduction a couple months before, but Betty Hill was a famous abduction. So they're looking at these old cases, and again, they're trying to look at the best cases that they can present to get their funding. So let's go to the next page.
Next one is the cattle
Yeah,
mutilations.
and again, that's coming from Ed Dames. He's using psychics to get the story. Um, to the helo. Now I guess he's saying that it's government because he's talking about a helo, surgically cut and dropped. Idea is to obtain farmers' land, which is rich in minerals. Okay, so that's one of the theories, that this one guy's trying to move the other guy out, so they mutilate some of his cows, and then he sells his farm, and they take over. That was one of the theories. The other theory that they had was that the U.S. government was looking at mad cow disease, and they were
Oh,
monitoring these cows to look for some sort of disease like that, and they were these high level guys. But I still say that that's highly improbable. That you take the U.S. Special Forces, the two biggest jobs that they had were, number one, getting the Iranian hostages out of Iran, and the assassination of bin Laden. And if you take a look at the incident in Iran, the two helicopters ran into each other, and they had sand in the filters and stuff like that, and they had to cancel because these two helicopters crashed when they're taking off to go make the rescue, and that was special forces. They had practiced all this, same as Bin Laden. They'd practiced for 6 months on that Bin Laden thing, and still when they went in, they crashed the stealth
And
helicopter into the wall
they still
and
crashed
had
it.
this thing where they blew it up. So if the stealth helicopters and stuff, the top military technology crashes twice, I mean, we're going to do 10,000 cattle mutilations and never crash a helicopter. That
Right.
nothing. It definitely to me did not appear to be the government. It appeared to me my idea, but these guys had a different idea. But it was Ed Dames putting his idea through this psychic. But my belief is that all cattle mutilations are basically downwind and downstream from nuclear activities of above ground launches, because they all basically happen west of the Rockies. There's really nothing east of the Rockies. There's nothing on the east coast of the United States, and so you got all these. They're giving us a signal, number one, and they're mutilating these cattle in the areas where this radioactive contamination. There was one guy actually had a map, and I wanted to interview him, and we never got it done. But he had a map where he took cancer rates in the Plain States, and he put it over top of the cattle mutilation map, and the high cancer rates were in the same spots where the cattle mutilations were taking place. So that
Oh.
was one of the ideas that the is basically a signal to us that like you may say, well, why would they drop that cow? Why did they drop that cow? And somebody in Washington is going, did you see where they dropped that cow? Did you see what they did? They know exactly what's going on. Like, why is there never a government investigation of it? They were investigating it, but they never kept it public. But I'm pretty sure that they would get the signal is saying, why are they in this area? That'd be the first question. Why is this area so high? Why is Colorado so high? Why is Montana so high? And they would look at these things, and then somebody would come up with the idea. And I'm sure they knew. So every time they
Yeah.
mutilated a cow, somebody high up, people down below, the poor farmer had no idea what was going on, scared to death of, all this, what's going on to his cattle. But somebody in the government is saying, okay, there's another one, mark it down,
Yeah.
and stuff. And they wouldn't, like, if the government was mutilating them, what you would do is just go to when the guy's selling his cows and buy a cow from his. You wouldn't have to go and do this whole thing, because it was said before, and it makes sense, that if you're the U.S. military, you're not going to do an operation like this. You got to look at risk versus reward. If you crash a helicopter, the game's over. I mean, the government is mutilating cattle of 10,000 farmers all over the United States. It's
Yeah.
game over. I mean, you got millions, trillions of dollars worth of lawsuits. So is it worth getting the cow with a helicopter? No, you're just going to buy it at the market. And that's the whole deal. Is that it doesn't make any sense the government would do that, because the risk is so high of getting caught. Because at the time in the 70s, when I got in, that was really hot, 1975. There was farmers out in their fields waiting for someone to fly over, and they were shooting at anything that flew over. They were just petrified because there's so many cattle mutilations taking place in
Mhm.
1975. And now there really hasn't been one. There was saying there's one in Washington. They basically don't happen anymore. It's like, oh, we're on to another show. Now we're doing orbs, and we're doing. To me, it's always like the UFOs where they do something, and then okay, let's do something different. They do something different. Even like
Mm.
we were talking about before, angel hair. Well, angel hair we knew back in the 50s,
This is
60s,
this is
70s.
this is next page actually is
Okay,
angel
yeah.
hair. But yeah, as before we move away from cattle mutilations, this valley I live in, the San Luis Valley, the in Crestone,
Mhm.
next to Blanca Peak, the Great Sand Dunes. This is one of the most well known areas for cattle mutilations that in the United States in this valley.
Yeah.
But
Jack Houk.
this
So what they're
so
looking
this
for here
this one really I must say when I was going through and just thumbing through this getting ready for the interview, this page right here is the one that got me. Like I've never this is totally new information for me, so I'm totally interested to hear about the angel hair.
Okay, well, first let's go through the first one. So that's Jack Houk. Now his notes were recovered as well, but he doesn't have much detail or handwriting on it. And he's talking about recovered materials found, and there's question marks. So it sounds like, but Jack Houk has heard it secondhand, and so that's the whole debate. Do they have a crash flying saucer? Is Roswell real? All that. That's what the first thing's about. So what these guys again are trying to do is they're trying to get material that they can take to the government to sell them on it. So if you've got recovered UFO material, well then of course you can go and say, well, we're going to get, going to back engineer this material, we're going to be able to make strong material and flying saucers. That's the first thing. The angel hair samples, again, this is from the 1985. So before then, there was a lot of these cases. In the 50s, was very popular. So the UFO would fly by, fly down the street, and it would just cover everything with what looked like a giant spider web. It would be this white stuff, and they called it angel hair, and it was very sort of soft, and it would hang off the tree. So it would come across, and the UFO would drop all this angel hair all over everything. It would be hanging all over the place, and people would, of course, get bags, and they would try to collect all this stuff, and it would disintegrate as fast as you could pick it up. It would just sort of like melt, almost like snow, and yet it was like angel hair. It was like a material. And there was even one case, the 1952 Washington overflight of Washington, D.C., there was a piece that was recovered, and it was sent to Canada to Wilbert Smith. And the guy the captain that sent it out of the CIA to Canada actually had the piece and then angel hair in the box. And when it got to Ottawa, of course, the angel hair was gone because it actually disintegrates. There's been some analysis of what was made, but everybody's trying to get a piece of it quickly to get it analyzed before it would disintegrate. But this is very common in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and now it's like calendar relations. It doesn't happen. You might have the odd, rare case somewhere where it happens, but it basically doesn't happen anymore. And then
Gotcha.
then you get this material, yellow material, but then they figured it was conventional polyester. So of course that has to be dropped. So they're trying to look for material, paper tape. That was the Roswell thing. They were talking about this tape that was on it, common. So they discount that. And then somebody's got metal shavings. And then they're talking about this stuff. Is it chaff? They're asking these questions. And of course, then they would want to get this into to analysis so they could take it to whoever they're selling the project to get funding. But this is what they're trying to get is they're trying to get hard evidence. They're trying to get materials. This is, again, the UFO community is trying to do the same thing. Has anybody got a piece of the craft? Has anybody got any of this kind of stuff? And this is what these guys are doing, just trying to get hard evidence to present. But it seems like they don't have very much. The Brazilian magnesium case, this is an interesting one. This is the one they're working on. If you're familiar with Gary Nolan and Kit Green, they're working on this project where they've got these materials, and they have this machine at Nolan's lab that can analyze any sort of material. So they're taking this material and they're looking at the isotopes. And they had this piece of a craft. This is 1950s again. Is flying towards a beach. All these people are on the beach, and I think it's the same thing. There's two crafts, and then the one comes down, and it's gonna crash, and it gets just sort of above them, and it just goes boom into them like a million pieces, and all these pieces rain down on these people. The same as the Maury Island. If you're familiar with the sighting that occurred 3 days before Kenneth Arnold, the first UFO sighting, was in off the coast of Washington, where this UFO came and sort of all these pieces rained down on these people. One guy broke his arm, a dog died. There was all this damage and stuff like that. And so the Brazilian piece was there was a lot of these pieces recovered by people. And so Gary Nolan got one, and if you see in some of his presentations, this is the one where they've got two pieces from the same crash, and one has the isotopes are all messed up, and the other one the isotopes are completely normal. Same craft. So this is this whole idea. And to me, it's like, to me, when I see that, I go, oh, that's theory. Wow. They just want you to go, what the heck how do they do that? It's like, wow, and the more you talk about it, the more everybody thinks, and everybody goes, maybe it's an alien, maybe it's from another planet. And it sort of keeps raising that consciousness where they don't come down and directly tell you that we're here and this is what we're going to do and this is how it works, because it's like all of life is like this ride. You go up and down, around and around, and we're here to learn. And it's not about them coming to give us the answers, because then they give you the answers to the test. There's not much of a test if you get all the answers. We are to figure it out through our own experiences. We're the
I
ones that come to the light and figure it out. And it's not that they're going to come down and do our homework for us, because if you do your kid's homework his whole life, write all his exams, when he comes out of grade 12, he won't know anything. The kid has to, as tough as it is, has to go through that experience and has to learn that.
mhm.
So that's what that's all about.
I think we're dealing with the free will. I think the free will is part of one of the laws that dictate this creation,
Yeah.
like that, because they can't just step in and tell us the answer. For one, we have the free will. We have to openly choose to do that. That's why I tell people all the time, like, I can't. It, people ask me, like, if could we take ayahuasca and just like like take all the politicians hostage, feed them ayahuasca, and then in the morning the world changes. No,
Yeah.
it wouldn't work because
Yeah.
there's, the it might work for a few of them, but because they've had the idea of maybe doing it, but most of them are going to have this free will blockage that the medicine is not even really going to give them a
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. 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 It's
And
like, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's they have this thing where people aren't ready. And even if you were to get in it, the message you're going to get is going to be a very low level message, which I found with psilocybin, that if you open yourself up and you don't, because I never believed in this sort of idea of running asking for a prayer of protection and stuff like that. Oh, it sounds pretty crazy. Yeah, well, and I did run into this. I did run into this sort of negative aspect, is that you open yourself up and you're going to pick up all the bad vibration that people are, all the negative stuff. And I was in this, and so I had the last 5 experiences were horrendous, were bad, were whatever, and then and it was this idea that I was picking up this low vibration, and I didn't really believe it. And then now I would do it again, except that I don't know if you ever heard about Kay Randall May. Kay Randall May. Have you ever heard of her?
uh-uh.
No. So Kay Randall May is considered to be the best medical intuitive maybe in the world. She was helping Kit Green from the CIA, made a contact with her. A lot of the UFO people will get a reading from her. And she's a medical intuitive, and she did a medical reading for me, and it was really weird because she talked about this tooth on the top right side that was giving me trouble. And I'm not sure if she got the right tooth, whether it was, but it was the top right side, and it was like one tooth, and you need to go look at it. And I knew it. It was like it's a crown, and it's not sealing right or something. So from
Uh-huh.
time to time, I can have a feeling in it, whatever. So anyway, she did that, and then she says to me, she's it's funny, like she never met me before. She says, "Have you ever done psychedelics?" And I go, "Yeah, I did." She says, "Did you do it as a young kid, or you just do it recently?" I said, "No, I never did as a young kid. I just did it recently. I did this experiment with 25 experiments." And she says, "Don't do it again." That's what she said. "Don't do it again." And I said, "Oh, okay." She says, "You opened up. You opened up to a bad. You picked up a bad vibration or something like that. You picked up something. Don't do it again." And I went, "How does she know that?" Because nobody knew that the bad last 5 trips were pretty. I mean, they were meaningless trips, or they didn't have any message, or they had the
Uh-huh.
one was like with the 50-foot waves. I'm in this boat with 50-foot waves, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I didn't know they could make waves that big. And it was like the storm in my life is coming, and stuff like that. And it was like just horrendous stuff, and it just kept going and going and going and going. So that's the thing where you learn as you go along, that you can pick up the low vibrations that are there as well as the high vibrations. You got to,
Mhm.
and that's the whole idea about possibly that whatever you meet in your experience is you creating it, because you at a vibration that you're going to get certain events. And if you open yourself to low vibration, you're going to get low events. That's what you're going to see. And it's all, we control everything in our mind, almost like the Buddhists. What's these Buddhists that meditate their whole life, and they're preparing to die because they believe that your life will be however you've planned it. And so they don't want to get stuck in an afterlife that's got all sorts of negative stuff in it. So they spend their whole life meditating. But to me, you still got to make some sort of presentation of your experience. You can't
Yeah.
save yourself. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to a cave for the rest of my life, and I'm going to save myself. To me, that's almost like very ego. Like, you
Well,
know,
it's putting more credit on the creation than it actually should need.
yeah, yeah,
It is sacred. But this is an experience, and I think, like I said before, man, I think this whole experience is to get to that trifecta of existence, the
yeah,
oneness on two legs, and being able to walk as that oneness, and still being able to live in the separates, and
yeah,
find that balance in between.
yeah.
But this there's not much on this next one.
Oh, this is the best slide of the whole thing. This
Is
is
this
the
is this Admiral Bobby? Is
Bobby
that
Ray
Admiral?
Inman. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, back in the day, because I've always done the cover up thing, the rumor has always been Bobby Rainman was running the back engineering thing. He was with SAIC. He was assistant he was head of NSA, assistant of other agencies. Very, very high level guy. Was going to be Clinton's CIA director, and he had some business problems, and I think he was gay. They were going to expose him. This goes back in the day when you could be really damaged by being, homosexual or something. So he pulled out, but he was always rumored to be the guy that ran the program. So here's these 20 guys. And of course, the main thing they want to know is back engineering. They want to sell it. Oh, we can build another craft. We can back engineer this thing. So that's the evidence they're looking for. And all they have on the page is Bobby Rindman. They all know the rumor. They all know Bobby Rindman, but nobody's had contact with him. And later on, people did make contact with him, and they were talking to him about MJ12, and he sort of said, "Well, I haven't been in it for a long time. My clearances aren't, you know, anymore. I really am out of the loop as to what's going on and stuff like that." But he was actually talking to a guy, and the guy had it taped on phone. And the other interesting story was that Stephen Greer said that he always told the story that Bobby Raymond was running the show, and so he was dealing with Senator Barry Goldwater out of Arizona, and Barry Goldwater said at one point, he says, "So tell me who's running this thing?" And then Greer says, "Bobby Raymond." And then Senator Goldwater, who ran the Intelligence Committee for the Senate, he was the head of the Intelligence Committee. He says, "Oh, really? Oh, he's my friend. I'll give him a call." And Stephen Greer says, "Yeah, give him a call. Ask him about UFOs and back engineering." And Stephen Greer tells a story. And later, I actually recovered from the Goldwater collection. I actually recovered a letter that proved that this phone call actually did get made. And people are saying, "Oh, Greer made it up and stuff." Greer has got a lot of ego, but he doesn't really make up a lot of stories. A lot of his stories turn out to be actually the way, maybe elaborated, but they're actually what happened. So Bobby Rinn makes this phone call, and according to the daughter, this is Stephen Greer's version. According to the daughter, her father phoned Bobby Raymond, and she had never seen her father so distressed in his life after he came off the phone, and he never talked about UFOs again. And so whatever Bobby Raymond told him, I don't know, but Goldwater didn't touch the subject after that. So Bobby Raymond, and that's all they do. So nobody really has any information. All these high level guys, and that's the whole problem is they're trying to figure out like, and except John actually said there's interest. So all these guys like that were in my meeting, they're all interested. There's interest, but there is nothing. There's no investigations. That's why John always says he doesn't believe there's a government investigation of black ops, because he said we tried to find it, we couldn't find it. All they've got on Bobby Inman, all back engineering is the rumor is that Bobby Inman's running it, but nobody can get to it because it's so highly classified.
That's crazy.
And John would say, no, it's not. There is nothing. The Cuban incident. Have you ever heard about the Cuban incident?
Where they did they shut down the silos or something?
No,
Is
they
it,
shot
it
down a plane. So there's a UFO coming in over Cuba. This is 1967. Stanton Friedman, that's one of the files. When I went to see Stanton Friedman's files, the first thing I look for is the index. So you're one of the index, so you want to go, you haven't got time, so you got to look at which box you want to look at, what kind of files are in the box. And first thing I wanted was the Cuban incident. And then they sent me the file before I went, and they said, yeah, the Cuban incident's in there. So Stanton got involved with it. National Enquirer got involved with it. There's a group that was on Secrecy, UFO Secrecy, got involved. They actually had the FBI come to their door and scare the living daylights out of them. But what happened was the Cuban have an intercept. There's a UFO coming in over Cuba. They sent up two jets. The two jets go and they give it the warning, land or we're going to shoot you down, all this kind of stuff. Identify yourself. Nothing happens. The UFO keeps coming in towards Cuba. And it's all picked up by U.S. Navy intelligence in Florida. They're monitoring this call. They've intercepted the call, and they're monitoring the call. And the wingman from behind is describing this. And then they have it from the the control tower or whatever that says, take it down, shoot it. And so the guy says, we're locking on, the guy in the back. And all of a sudden he goes, oh my God, he's gone. Oh my God, he's gone. Disintegrated. And the front plane that had locked on to shoot just disintegrated in the air. And the back guy is describing this incident of his buddy. And now he's gone. The plane's gone. And so U.S. intelligence picked it up. And so, of course, that was leaked to Stanton Friedman, and then it went through this FOIA, and the investigators that were on this UFO secrecy thing went to the NSA, and they say either you release the file to us of that incident, or we're going to the Cuban embassy. And that afternoon, they had the FBI at their door and scared the living daylights out of them. So
I
they sort of
bet.
dropped the case. But that's in Stanton's file. It's a 19. So these guys are discussing this. They want to
Wow.
talk about who knows what happened. Has anyone got the tape and all this kind of stuff. It's one of the big cases. If they could identify it, it'd be a big case. But it's
That's
in there. The
crazy.
Cuban incident.
So
Cuban.
the 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 first plane never reappeared or anything.
No, no.
It's gone
The
forever.
idea was it was just disintegrated. They locked on, and as soon as the plane locked on, The UFO just took it out of this reality. Just boom, gone.
I wonder where it ended up, man. That's gonna keep me up tonight.
Well, they have stories back. Stanton Friedman wrote a book with a guy that there was so many planes in the early 1950s that disappeared mysteriously, that were out to intercept UFOs and stuff like that. And they're talking hundreds of planes, hundreds of pilots that
My
they
God.
lost. And that was the idea of the shoot down order, that they'd get in the order to shoot it down. And the story that Einstein had come to Truman. Have you ever heard that story? Truman had given the shoot down order, said shoot them down if they don't identify themselves, whatever. And it was called the shoot down order. And all these people were sending in telegrams to the president, please, Mr. President, don't shoot him down, don't shoot him down. And according to Frank Edwards, who was the biggest radio producer at the time, Frank Edwards went to Frank Edwards heard the story that Albert Einstein had gone to the president, and he said, "Mr. President, anybody who can come across millions of miles of space will know how to protect themselves once they get here. Don't start something you can't finish." And he
Right?
and the story was that this is
It's
the
so
first time give
true.
him hell. Harry decided better not give him any hell. But that's what I supposedly, and that was Frank Edwards, who had like 10 million people listen to him every day on mutual radio. That told that story that Einstein had gone to the president and given him the warning about don't get into something you can't finish.
It's so true. People, there's the mil- at one time the military, the U.S. military, was supposed to be like the indestructible, and now
Yeah,
over the past 20 years, 10, 15, 20 years, we've definitely seen that it's not that way. So
yeah.
yeah, it's
That's
it's
even like the
crazy.
the thing where people will talk about, oh, we got the technology, and I say, this story about going 100,000 light years in 1 second, like give your head a shake. There's no way we've got anything like that. Or people that describe that the craft is bigger on the inside than outside. That's commonly described, and people will go like, I can't believe it. And then the beings will say, we can make it as big as we want on the inside of the craft. And people look outside, it's 30 feet, and look inside, it's the size of a football stadium inside, and they just can't figure it out, and that kind of stuff. Or the thing where I always say they're showing off. They're just trying to get people to talk about it. It's like you talk about it, everybody discuss it. So when you get the famous Nimitz case, what happens in the Nimitz case? This thing is at 80,000 feet, and they drop down to sea level in 7/8 of a second. So what's
Hmm.
that about? What the hell? What are they doing that for? Like, why would you do that? Is that a pre-abduction maneuver, or is that taking off energy, or like, no, it's showing off. It's called showing off. It's like, what's this? And boom, it's like 7/8 of a second. It
Or
drops
when
down.
they disappear and turn up at the cap point,
Yeah,
the
yeah. And that's the whole thing. They're just saying, like, watch this. And people are going,
mhm.
holy cow. And they want people to talk about it. It's like when people see a UFO, I always say, hey, so how long was it there? I don't know. It was about 4 seconds. I go, what was it doing? I don't know. It wasn't doing anything. It was just there. And I go, do you think you wanted you to see it? Yeah, I think I was supposed to see it. And it's this idea. It's like
Mhm.
it's waking you up. It's like even my friend. I have a friend here. It's a funny story. I have a friend here. He's a big business guy, and he's had two really dramatic sightings in his life. And he had his son died, and he's pretty interesting guy. So he tells these stories about the UFOs he saw, and because he got a lot of money, he hired this woman who was one of the top psychics in the United States. So he gets her, and he gives her 13 test questions about himself. She gets them all right. And I remember we were in this cabin, and we were actually in the cabin with Tyler D, who's the famous NASA guy. But anyway, we were there, and so Mark gets this all the stuff from this girl, and then he asks her the question. He says, I had this one sighting. He had the one sighting where he's at the cabin and he's watching this movie about UFOs, and it's like 10 minutes to go or whatever. And they're at the climax of the movie, and he says, I think I'm going to go and Star Watch. And he goes out with his laser to Star Watch. And his wife says, what are you doing? It's 10 minutes left in the movie. You're not going to watch the end of the movie here? He says, no, I think I go Star Watch. And he walks out, and this UFO goes racing by, and then he hits it with his laser. He hits it with the laser. And he's thinking, so why did I do that for? But it was that close. He hit it with the laser, and that was the end of the sighting. And then the next one he had, the thing was going past the house. He lives on the river, going past the house like a ball of fire, like gas. This thing's burning away. And then, 2 years later, he's talking and he's telling the story beside his wife. And his wife's not interested in UFOs. That's the classic thing. He's telling the story, and then he says, "This ball of fire." And he says, "What do you mean ball of fire? There's not ball of fire." He said, "Yeah, it was ball of fire. It was like gas. It was burning." He says, "No, it wasn't. It was a silver disc." And he said, "You saw it? It was a silver disc?" He said, "Yeah, it was a silver disc." And so they saw two different things. And so he went to this psychic, and that's when he said to the psychic, he said, "So I had these two sightings." He tells us these two sightings. He says, "So where were they from?" She said, "They weren't from anywhere." He said, "What do you mean they weren't from anywhere?" She said, "You sent them. You sent them to yourself to wake yourself up." He went, "Really? Did I?" And that's the idea is, are we behind the sightings? Are we part of the thing? Are we brothers to the people in the ship? Did we agree to this whole thing that
We
we're at this
are.
point, this
There
very high
is
point of history, that we've come down to do this stuff at this point in history? We've chosen to be here.
I believe we are.
Yeah.
I totally believe we are. You know,
And when you
it's
believe that, then you start living life the right way, I think.
yeah. I mean, what else is there? Like what I said at the beginning. Like, what else is there, man? Like, if you if you had a genuine experience, no matter if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, whether it be with a ghost, whether it be with a entity, whether it be with an ancestor, sitting bull, or a
Yeah.
ET, it's like we've said, like I've said, like we've had the conversation over and over.
Yeah.
This phenomenon is all of it.
Yeah.
And when people in the UFO community, that's I think that's why I've had a hard time sharing my story in the UFO community, because it has the overshadowing
Yeah.
the old people uh get and not talking about you, Grant,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
putting you in that category, but I'm talking the people that believe, like, are discounting everything because I have ayahuasca behind my name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're discounting this as a hallucination or whatever,
Yeah.
when they don't understand it's about frequency and vibration. And when you get closer to the vibration of source, you start to experience everything that source has experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly. But you and I understand that. So that's the shift I think that's taking place, is they're still into this materialistic world where they don't really see this other part of the thing as existing. They don't
mm,
understand. And it's almost like if you have the ayahuasca experience, it's not until you've been there that you, as like people say, "Oh, you just believe and I know." It's like, no, it's the other way around. You have a belief system based upon what you learned in school and Sunday school and all everywhere else you came from, whatever. And I'm the one that knows. When you've had the experience, you know. Don't tell me where I was. And people will say it's more real than the real world. And so
mm.
I even talk about the thing with my friend, who I don't know if you've interviewed, Oak. Oh shoot, I'm gonna forget. Anyway, he's an AI guy that was doing DMT. So I was doing the ayahuasca, the psilocybin experiment. He was doing DMT. So we were sort of sharing notes. And then he said, "Last night I had an abduction experience." I said, "You did?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, it was just as real could be. He said, I said, "It was like an abduction. It was like a classic abduction experience. I'm on a table. These beings are there. They're working on my head or something." And so this is the whole deal. And he maintains, as people would, that this is as real as the real world. I mean, it was like, no difference at time, space, all these components, whatever. And so then he came out and he told me this story about, how real it was and stuff like that. And the thing was, he was on a bed for 10 minutes. And so you see that whole thing, that this idea of creation, that we are creating, and that when we die, we keep creating, and that we are responsible. And you got to be careful what you're creating, that you could send yourself down a road of karma where you've got to revisit something or whatever. And we've got lessons to learn. And to me, the end result is always this idea that the universe is growing. It's becoming more intelligent, more beautiful, more complex. And that's what we're here to do. We're not here to revert to ourselves and think that we're going to take stuff along, or have a good life and disregard all this kind of stuff. Those are people at our lower level. But eventually, as you and I share stories and we go, I can see the change taking place already. Even in society, you can go
I
into
can't.
society, and people will know what an out of body experience is. They know what a near death experience. They may not believe it, but in the old days, you wouldn't even know what that stuff is. Why would you talk about remote viewing? Everybody knows the sort of thing. Everybody knows what Area 51. Even in China, they know what Area 51 is. I mean, even
Mhm.
if you speak a different language, and it's this idea that it's becoming more complex. That there is this other world, and then when you get young kids, they go along and they get into the depths. So an
Mhm.
older person may not get into the depth. They may say, I'm not going to do drugs, and I'm not going to. This is all nonsense. It's all in their head, whatever, and they just stay where they are. They just don't move, and then when they
Mhm.
die, but the younger people are different, where that consciousness will change, and it takes. And it's like we've got forever to do it. It's like because we're Westerners, we want everything we want it yesterday. So we're
Mhm.
let's speed it up, let's get it going, whatever. And it's about the journey. It's about what are we learning on the journey. It's not do you and I solve the problems of the world or do we save anybody or whatever. It's do we learn the rules ourselves or the game ourselves and become better people, and that raises the consciousness so other people can become better. But it's more about all because in the end you really in many ways can't change what other people are doing. You can just change yourself, and that may raise consciousness and may help other people by you doing things and I doing things and making the world a better place.
You know, a, a few things. I think that those whispers in the ears that we talk about here and there in these
Yeah,
meetings and things,
yeah,
I think the whisper in the ear is there is no separation. These we're actually related to these beings in a way,
exactly.
and I think that is I think that is the whisper. Honestly, I the and I think the reason that they think that we can't handle it is this is going to crush world religions. This is going to crush governments. This is going to just like this hurricane change the landscape in Florida. This knowledge and understanding is going to reshape the whole reality of how everything works. Like there's no other way. Like we can't go forward with when once you know this, you can't go forward with the way it's working now.
Yeah.
The some version of it, it's not going to be totally different. People are expecting you know magical things to appear and this and that. I think that we're going to view it the same. I think the difference is the internal view is going to change,
Mhm.
and that's the perception of each moment. And
Yeah.
anyways, we're both on the same page. So moving forward, I do want to get through this. I'm gonna
Yeah. This
if you can
is
go over. I do want to get through these notes a little bit.
Okay, so Kirkland Air Force Base. This is just a report that was made by Richard Doty because he was very famous at the time, leaking stuff, and a lot of people saw him as a counterintelligence guy, just trying to throw us off. So he did a report of some UFO inside Kirkland Air Force Base in 1980. Put the report out, and they're just sort of talking about it. They don't make any notes, so there's nothing much to talk about there. It's just a sighting report that happened 1980. Bob Wood,
It's
this is I talked about before. This is a study that he did in 1967. So he's giving a briefing on this thing, and the notes would not appear to me till about 2005. Nobody knew this group existed till 2005, and here it's in it being discussed in this meeting. And you can see what they did. They did observation, they did theory, they had scientists, they interviewed abductees, and they talked about the ramp and uh, the one woman said they asked her the regression. He's talking about one woman. She was inside described instruments. It got bigger or she got smaller. That's the same thing I was talking to you about before. Where people go in and they go, "Oh my God, the thing's like the size of a football stadium," and it was this little tiny craft. And so you get the whole thing about orbs. That orbs, I actually make the joke. I mean, if you get the advanced technology, you could have something like an orb, like a rock. You're walking down a path in the mountainside, and there's a rock there, and if you actually know what to do, you get inside the rock. There's a whole civilization inside there, or a whole world inside there. Because if there's no time and space, you can put everything in one spot. And that's this whole idea that the aliens say they can. The one woman who first told me she'd flown the craft, who I thought she was totally crazy. She was in Phoenix when she told me that story. I thought she was totally nuts. But she said they have crafts the size of solar systems. They can make them as big as they want. They can do whatever they want because it's all made out of consciousness. And that's what we got to realize is that you and I are building stuff out of consciousness. It's all made out of consciousness, and that we are creating by
hmm
manifesting by our beliefs. And if everything's negative beliefs, the manifestation is going to go south and it's going to
hmm
become more ugly. But if everybody gets on the right page and manifests properly, we go up. It becomes more beautiful, more. And that's the whole thing. So when you get, I say God did not create the heaven and the earth. God just created the sparks of the divine, which created the heaven and the earth out of consciousness. And if you've ever seen Mark Sims, are you familiar with his story? He had a UFO sighting on a C5, and he has this 13-day experience where the being is inside him and telling him how it works. And that he describes it exactly the same way as Michael Newton. If you're familiar with Michael Newton, who does Journey of Souls, he regresses people. He did 7,000 people, and there's been 35,000 regressions. There's all these people who do these Newton regressions. So he regresses a person back to their life between lives. So he lets them go to the last life they had, then he lets them die. And he says, okay, what's happening? I'm leaving my body. I see a light. I'm going down a tunnel, all this stuff. And he says, okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I go in, we're in a station, and all these balls of light are there, and we're all like balls of light energy, and then we're all going down, and I can see all the groups and all the soul groups on the side like grapes hanging down, and I know my soul group's coming out. And the soul idea, you have a soul group, and you all agree to do some different roles. You come into the world, and you're trying to do whatever you're trying to do. And when I saw the project, the chart that Mark Sims had shown by this alien showed him, was the idea that you start with very simple things like rocks and stuff like this, and it goes up to insects and plants, and it keeps going in humans, and then it goes to soul guides, and it moves all the way up. And the last one, number 15, is you are creating galaxies. And that's this whole idea that we become more and more enlightened as we go along, and our creations get bigger, and our things, and it's all just to make the universe bigger and more and more. And that at one level, there's people who are so advanced level through all these levels they've gone through, that they're actually now creating galaxies. They're manifesting galaxies out there. And that, when you hear that kind of stuff, then it sort of makes sense that we are on a trip, and we are to do something, and that we're moving along. And that, to me, there will be no time like the heaven thing. Oh, we're just going to sit there and listen to angels play harps and stuff like that. And I
How
go, I'd be
boring.
bored within an
How
hour. I mean, let me
boring.
out of
How
here.
boring.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
boring.
You just come back in and you say, okay, I'll go back on the roller coaster again. And there's going to be some ups and downs and rounds and lights and noise and stuff, but it's just a ride. Get back on there. And this time, or Newton said, like he regressed to 7,000 people to death. And then they would go in front of the council, and it'd be between 3 and 12 people on a council. And they have the gowns, they have the silver, or the medals around them, and they have the symbol. And then around the symbol was the writing, and the person knew what the symbol meant. It was for them. And they would get the sort of the life review, where they would review. And Newton said they only got asked one question: Drew, so how'd it work out? Because you planned it, you put the whole thing together, and you can't say, time out, it's so and so's fault, or whatever. The dog ate my homework. None of that works. It's like you're there, and he said everybody has the same answer. I could have
Mhm.
done better. And when you look at that, you say, okay, I know some stuff. Am I doing, can I do better? Could I do more? Whatever. And he said, everybody answered the question the same way. I could have done better. I did what I thought I was going to do pretty much, but I forgot to do this, and I forgot to do that. And I was scared to do that, and whatever. And it's this idea that life has got meaning, that we are one with the source, and we come in, and we have roles to do. There's nothing accidental about what's going on here.
Yeah, man. I'm just so glad that I'm taking this journey with you, man. Like, it's we've talked several times. I know when the first time we talked, uh, it was hard to really understand when I was first on your show, like a couple years ago, back
Yeah.
in 19 or 20 or whatever it was. But yeah, and then after the John Hopkins thing, I just noticed a totally different, like, when we talk, it's just amazing. So it's I know that I'm manifesting this moment. Like I
Yeah.
that's one of the things that people don't, people think that, trees can talk to you, or this,
Yeah.
that, and the other, like how the spirit world works. But it's knowing those truths and applying it in the
Yeah.
background to every moment. Like, I know that I'm one. I know there's only one consciousness. So I know that who I'm talking to now is, one, a part of my consciousness, but
Yeah.
two, there Grant is agreeing and has agreed long before that we were going to have this talk at this moment. We were going to talk about these subjects,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's it's just awesome how it's really cool once you see how it works.
Yeah, you just keep going. Wow, that's why I have this theory of wow. Is it's just this like wow, it's
Yeah.
like holy cow, I can't believe this is going on, and that's what gets you the moment where you can't get out of it. When you have the experience, it changes your life. It's not just an experience, and people don't realize that it's
It
something that alters. It comes with emotion. It comes with all sorts of other things that just sort of rivet you, or even the UFO sightings. People get surprised, the fact that, people that know me, that know I'm in UFOs. I always say, every time you go to a UFO conference, you get going and you start talking, and within about half an hour, everybody's talking about God. Everybody's talking about the universe, and because that's what it comes down to. But when people see you go to a UFO conference, they think, oh, Grant and Drew are there, and they got these UFO photographs, and they're showing UFO photographs to each other, and they're talking about UFOs and stuff. And I say, that's nobody talks about UFOs. Everybody's talking about God, about how does
Yeah.
the universe work and stuff like that, because people realize it's this complex thing. And people, I guess it would be finding surprising that you would find spirituality in UFOs, but that's all it is when you come right down to it. This is my book I'm doing right now, is this book about the fact that when you start looking at the world and all the stuff in the world, you just, even channeling, like people will say, Drew, you're not channeling. How do you mean you're channeling? And I go, come on, you're channeling too. Everybody channels. Like, where do you think the words are coming from? I mean,
Yeah.
people speak at 130 words a minute. I speak faster, probably 170 words a minute.
At
But
least.
you have that thing, like, and I say, do you actually think there's some neurons running around in your head randomly looking for words to put in the sentence one after another and put them in the right order and get the grammar right? And you got the little neuron with the bun on her hair, like the teacher with the bun on her hair, and she's doing the grammar check, and then someone's doing accents, and someone's working the hands, and neurons are working the tongue, and they're all doing it together by accident, and it's just coming together. It's like, come on, you're channeling, you're coming, you're just at a lower level. And the higher the level, the more you can channel at those higher levels what that knowledge is in there right now. But the idea that these ideas are coming, by neurons, I mean, it's like it's absolutely seamless. Or even the thing where, like, I'll lose a train of thought. Like, where does that go? When you forget something, when a name escapes you, like, where does that name go? And then you're walking along and suddenly pops in your head. Or have you ever had the experience? I play a lot with this now. You have the experience, you're in the house, and I have a lot of these experiences now where I go out of the room and I'm going to go do something, and I get in the other room and I go, what was I going to do? And you go, oh, what was I going to do? And I go back to where I had the idea, and it pops back in my head. And I can do that every single time. And I'm going, like, something's going on here. This is so, just amazes me. It's like this wow factor. It's just like a wow, wow. And the more you see it, the sort of the more respectful you are of the universe, and the more grateful you are for life, for having been here. And when I did the two things I learned the best that I can even remember, because I had 25 of these psilocybin things, but I don't remember many of the details. But the one things I do remember, I remember this hell experience where I'd be stuck in this hell experience. I had it maybe 6 or 7 times. And it would be this thing, when you surrender, and the deeper you got, the more you popped on the other side, going the other way. And the other thing I got was the thing of compassion, which you say, well, compassion, but not like you experience in this. And it was like I had 3 different compassion experiences they showed me, and it was a feeling. It was like the idea. The one for sure I remember was, how you've got a relative that's dying, a father, a mother, grandfather, whatever, and everybody's there, and they're hoping that there's going to be a drug come along, and everybody's praying, and they're sitting by the bedside, and they're hoping for a miracle and stuff like that. And all of a sudden the person dies. They take their last breath, and everybody around the bed goes, oh, it's over. They died. And it's that feeling. And that was a feeling once, twice, three, boom, 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 boom. And they're coming in. And it's like the whole world, all these feelings of these people, with this feeling of people just at the moment of death, and the despair of the people realizing it didn't work. The person has died. The person we were hoping, we were praying, and this despair and it was on me. And the more it was like you sort of felt it, and then you could feel this compassion. You could feel their hurt and stuff like that. And that amazed me. And the other one was, and it happened so many times, and it's funny because I made a joke out of it, but it's actually funny. I'd be sitting there, and it was the gratitude guy. I called it the gratitude guy, because it would be later in the experience where I would suddenly get this gratitude thing, where I felt like I was the luckiest person that had ever lived. I was absolutely convinced of it. The same as the certainty. It was like certainty that I was the luckiest person that ever lived. But it would come, and it would be like somebody pouring honey over you or water over you, and it would just go down, and this gratitude thing would come over you, and it would last for 10 or 15 minutes. I'd be just in this sort of heightened moment of gratitude and stuff like that. And then it would sort of go away, and the experience would end, whatever, and I'd be in experiences, and I'd be like, wonder where the gratitude guy is. I wonder if the gratitude guy is going to come. And it would be later in the experience. It would just like, oh, the gratitude would happen again. And oh, the gratitude guy is here. I call him the gratitude guy. It was the most weird experience. It was this
Yeah,
gratitude
I,
and then the
I
compassion thing. So now I do, like, if you've seen, a lot of practices use the thing. That's sort of how I end my day. I first do a compassion meditation, and then I do a thankfulness meditation. And then I figure I've sort of cleaned the slate, and I'm ready to go. And then it's time to go to sleep. But I've learned that from my experience, that would seem to be something that they were very interested in, was gratitude and compassion. Those are two lessons that I got. The gratitude I got many times. The compassion I only got maybe 4 times, and it was a different feeling. It was one was when the feeling of somebody dying when you go into an office and the doctor says, that's it. We can't do anything more for you. You're going to die. As they told my father, the disease is going to take its course. I mean, that sort of thing where they talk to you. And it was that feeling when those people have, and there are all these people, like hundreds and thousands of them coming on, and I could feel them all at the same time. And you felt one with them. You felt the compassion. The most dramatic experiences I had of my psilocybin. The ayahuasca I never tried, and I was going to, because they're all different types of experiences. But the ayahuasca was like, to run into Mother Ayahuasca and actually get really tuned into what it's all about. I just fascinates me to hear these stories and to realize that there are all these different levels of people having these experiences through all these different modalities of meditation and
mhm.
plant medicines and all this kind of stuff, and learning even these very clear messages, like the big one in the UFO community is always this thing about the environment, that we're destroying the environment and this is terrible, and all this sort of stuff. And I remember, if you've ever heard the story about Terrence McKenna's brother, Dennis McKenna, he does the ayahuasca. He's in Brazil, and he's a pharmacologist, and he does the ayahuasca, and he gets the idea of the rainforest. Same as Sting. Sting got the idea of the rain, and he started putting millions of dollars into saving the rainforest. The singer Sing, and so Terrence McKenna's brother got the same message about, oh, the rainforest is going down, or everybody's going to die, and all this kind of stuff. And he's going, oh, he says, oh, I got to do something here. Like, holy cow, we got to save the world. And the voice comes to me, he says, what are you talking about? He says, this voice says, what are you talking about? You people just think you monkeys just think you're running the show. It's this idea, like, we're running this, and it's the idea that you got everything's going to be okay in the end. But you guys, you got to get yourself in perspective. You think you're running the world. You monkeys just think you're running the world. You're
You
not.
know, I haven't talked to you since my son was born.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That's the experience, and you had some ups and downs there.
yeah, we were in the hospital for a while, but he was born on 111. So he was
Wow.
born, if you know about number sequences and
Yeah, yeah.
everything, 11122. His original due date was 4/4/22. So that
Wow.
was his due date that he
Wow.
was supposed to be here. But
Wow.
he's taught me a lot, and he's taught me about manifestation, and he's taught me the key ingredients, and this is what I'm talking about next month at the Star Conference in Wagner, South Dakota, the Star Knowledge Conference, and I'm talking next month down at Zen Awakening Festival in Florida. If it's
Oh yeah.
still
If they get it
going on,
cleaned up, yeah.
I don't know if it's still going to go on or not, but yeah, he taught me manifestation. And the key to manifestation is gratitude and
Yeah.
being in the moment.
Yeah.
So we have an unlimited amount of this manifestation energy that's flowing out of us, and if we can learn how to put it in front of our feet instead of worrying about what happened in the past,
Yeah.
or worrying about what might happen in the future,
Sure.
if we just
Yeah.
worry about the step that's in front of us. So he's keeping me in the moment,
Yeah.
and he's keeping me in gratitude. And now, like, our church is manifesting, like there's all types of different things, that's positive things that's happening in our life, that's greatly attributed to him just teaching me how to really hone and where to focus my energy at. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing, man. Like,
Yeah.
children could be a great teacher. Do
Yep.
you is there anything else in these notes that you can think of that we can need to
Not
hit
really.
on?
This is the Cash Landrum. They're looking at old cases here. Cash Landrum was a big case where there was 23 helicopters. Here's their direction. There's one interesting thing in the middle here. I'll just quickly go through, and they have the where they're going to go, the plan. So they have Keyworth. If you look right in the middle of the page, they have this list. So they have Keyworth, no. I guess he went to Keyworth, who was the science advisor to Ronald Reagan, and he said no. We'll go back to that page before, or
Oh,
go to that page you were just on.
this
Okay,
one.
yeah. So they get authority. So Keyworth, the science advisor to the president, says no. Then they go to Poindexter, who is the national security advisor to the president. No. They go P, which is president. No. Vice president. No. And then they go to this other doctor. He says no. And they get down to this KERR guy, and they say maybe. And then you'll see that they deal with this Kerr guy. Now we don't know who he is yet, but that was the only place they had any sort of chance of getting any funding. And then who's the authority? Who do they want to go to? So they want to go high enough in the government that they have control, they have money, and they have the mindset. And the idea was they have to have the right mindset to do this. They've got to believe this mission of UFOs, otherwise it's all they're not going to go. So go to the next page. I don't know if there's really much here. This is basically actions. See, they're doing this whole thing where they're trying to get funding from the government. They're military people. No, there's nothing really here. Again, this is strategies. They're talking about different agencies. Here's the people that were involved in the thing. So you see CIA, NSA, AMC, BDM, where they held it. Hal Puthoff had his own institute at the time. Jack Houck was McDonnell Douglas, INSCOM, McDonnell Douglas, BDM. And the same old people, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed, 3 people from Lockheed, they were rumored to be controlling. So he puts down the names, and a lot of these people will come under surveillance. Now people will look up their names and contact them if they're still alive. And have you got your notes? And you may get people who surrender their notes or add material. But again, it was a project that failed. So Tom DeLonge came along, his worked better. He did the same thing. He had a bunch of people who were feeding him information, and he did it, and it ended up in Senate. And now it looks like they're going to get money. The only problem with the disclosure that's taking place now in Washington is it's all going to happen in the black world. You have not learned anything about what they're doing because they got 144 cases. We don't know anything. They don't tell you anything. You just know that they've got a group going and they're investigating it, but it's all still in the black world. Again, here you've got all these databases, and they're talking about detectors, all this kind of stuff that they can get, detectors, RV things, people RVing, all this kind of stuff. They're just setting up how they're going to propose, if they get the money, what they're going to do, how they gather data for UFOs and stuff. But this is so far behind the loop. The only thing interesting about this whole thing, it was the top people. It was people with top secret SCI clearances. These are not people on the street that were talking about it. And here they're talking about, again, how to do it, sensors, AI, theories, samples, like metal samples do they have and stuff like that, and the results, how much money do they need down at the bottom, how much money they need for funding. I think it was $1.5 million they asked for funding, and nobody would give them anything, so they basically shut the program down and it didn't go anywhere. But the notes did come out, and we got the notes, and we've got the guys, and it's been quite the thing to know a lot of these people and know that they're just, you see these government people and you think they're bad people. These people doing their job. It's the same way I worked in the government. I worked in the government through the university, and I always tell people, you think that there's people who know because they've got some sort of power. I had the keys to the president's office. I had the keys to the vice president's office. I had the keys to 8 vice president's offices. I had the keys to home payroll. I had keys to the human resources where everybody's file was contained. And do you think that I knew everything? If I knew everything, why did I leave 6 months before there was a buyout? They took my whole management level out by a buyout. Why would I leave 6 months early if I knew it was going? All I know what was going on was what's in my little office. I don't know what's going on in the office next to me. And people always think the government. So these government people are people who have the little piece of the puzzle. They're people who are generally interested. A lot of them are experiencers. They've had their own experiences. Even guys like Jim Semivan, who's the guy who actually went to the government and said, we're going to disclose this thing. I mean, he had the beings in his room. And, he basically said, my reality was shattered when I saw this. I never thought anything was possible like this. And the beings were actually in his room. So it's almost like the intelligence is coming even to high level people because they want this message out. They want people to, and you and I probably are part of that. So next time you and I get to be on the ship, and we're going to do that part of the role, and we're all almost like bees in a hive, that They all do exactly what they're supposed to do, the same as birds all do what they're supposed to do. Everything in nature does what it's supposed to do. It's only man with the free will that starts to mess things up and take things out of balance.
I couldn't say it better myself, man. So this has been an amazing night. What you have any messages for humanity?
Remember who you are. Remember who you actually are. You are, as I always say, you are not the player. You're not the actor on the stage. You are just playing an actor on the stage. When you leave, you will forget that. It will become, as soon as you die, it will become a dream, and in the next lifetime, it will become a forgotten dream. It is just a role you play. You've got to remember who you actually are and realize that you came into the world to do something. It's not accident. You plan to do something. The thing is to try to figure out, what am I here to do, and am I doing it? Otherwise, who cares what anybody else is doing? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And if I do what I'm supposed to do, we're not here to save the world. We're just here to learn ourselves, learn the lessons. But keep in mind, you are not the actor on the stage, or as the one channeler I listen to mostly now is this idea. I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know I'm a spark of the divine. I know what I am in truth. I know I'm a soul that has come into the world to do something. I know how I serve in truth. And
Mm,
I am in the upper room. This whole idea. Once you get that, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. I realize who I actually am. And I'm in the upper room and I see things from a different perspective, that I am not that person. I am this soul, this universe, this endless soul that is part of the divine. It's all part of the one, and having this living experience. And to me, everybody should try to help to make the universe a magnificent place and study the universe. I guess that'd be the other message. Study as much as you can the discoveries that you get and people in the UFO community get, and these stars stuff, and start to realize, is this possible? You start to realize how magnificent it is, especially when I did the thing with the tree. I could not believe it. When I started to look into the tree, how complex, 200,000 leaves on a tree, and it knows exactly when to put them out and exactly when to drop them. And it's just unbelievable.
that's amazing. You know, when you start seeing the small things, it's easier to see the big things.
Yeah.
And man, I honor you so much. I appreciate our friendship. I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on here. And yeah, you gotta. I, I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna send you the book, my first book on the ebook, and
Yeah.
you can put it on talk to text. I'm not gonna do it on Audible or anything, but yeah, I think it's. I think you're definitely. I think it's definitely time for you
Yeah. Yeah.
take a look at that.
I'm honored to get your wisdom from source, because that's what it's about. It's about talking to the people who are interacting with the phenomena. Why would you waste your time looking at sightings? Because I think they know that. The one expression done by the CIA was, because we cannot control the phenomena, we resort to watching the people who the phenomena is interacting with. So you and
Mhm,
I have this sort of honored position that we have this interest, and people are sort of watching us, but that's our sort of our role. But too much is given, much is expected. That we have come here on a
mhm,
high level mission, and we have to do what we can and remember what the mission is. Because a lot of times we sort of fall back into the illusion of the
mhm.
world, of stressing about being depressed about the past or anxious about the future, and not staying in the moment. Then it's hard, even when you know how to do it, to get in the moment and stay in the moment. It's hard. It's not the simple thing, but it's a learning process. And the more we go along, the more we'll learn how to do it and find it exciting, because it is exciting when you realize that you got to play in the Super Bowl of all stories. You got to be in this story and realize that
Mhm.
you are eternal, and that you have all this knowledge, and that it's not just a life. It's this multiple lifetimes of learning and understanding and looking at the universe and marveling and going in awe of what's going on. I just what more can you say? I mean, and your message was the same that I'd gotten to these people. Everything is perfect. Quit worrying about it. It's all perfect. It's all fine. Enjoy it and be thankful for it. Have the meditation to be grateful for what you've got, and realize. I mean, it's just unbelievable opportunity that we've got in terms of being who we are. Once we realize who we actually are, we keep forgetting who we actually are.
Well, I'm so glad that you join me tonight to drop this, to go through these notes. It's out there. This is not
Yeah.
the first time these notes have been put out, but I'm so glad we got to sit down, go through them
Yeah.
with someone that was such amazing knowledge base. Like, a lot of it didn't make sense to me. Like, I don't know names on there. Like I said before, I'm not a researcher. Like, I'm an experiencer that started this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
and so I haven't done a lot of research. Some of the names I've that
Yeah.
come up, I did recognize, but I'm so glad and so thankful for you being here with us tonight and helping us trudge through this and make a little bit more sense of exactly what was said on this. So, and
Beautiful.
man, I just pray and hope that it reaches the right ears and switches the right buttons and pushes the right buttons and whatever it needs to do. I just hope it spreads and whatever it needs to do. So
Beautiful. I'm
again,
with you.
thank you. And until next time, either on your show or on mine, I honor you so much.
Beautiful. I need to.
All right, bye. Oh, Grant Cameron, everybody, man, he's an amazing being, and yeah, check me out coming up. Star Knowledge Conference coming up 11th, 12th, 13th. Get your tickets. I run this banner right quick. You can get your tickets over there, starknowledge1111.com, and that's going to be honoring the late Chief Going Light Eagle and in Wagner, South Dakota. And again, that's starting on November 11th, next month. Man, I can't believe it's next month already. And Zen Awakening Festival, I'll be there November 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's in Orlando, Florida, tentatively. Again, prayers for everybody in Florida, everybody affected by the hurricane and everything. You can check out sacredjourneyswithin.com. Check out past interviews from Eagles Nest podcast, past interviews I've done. Uh, Ella's made some updates today and put some interviews that past interviews I've been on. And yeah, tomorrow I'll be with Laura Eisenhower. I'll be on her show. So exciting. Can't wait to be on her show and get to share and talk to her. And she's going to be at the Star 11 Star Knowledge Conference with me next month, speaking along with a bunch of other amazing guests. Everybody in the chat room, thanks for hanging out, Grandmaster. Yeah, Grant's amazing. Love him to death. Jess Rogie from the Jess Rogie Show, Sam, Fred. If I'm missing anybody, yeah, if you're listening over on Facebook, go over and like us on YouTube, over at Eagles Nest Podcast. Like, share, subscribe, hit that follow button so you can get updates and heads up on when the new shows are coming out and new guests. And yeah, this has been another amazing conversation with Grant Cameron. It's always an honor to have him on. And yeah, everybody enjoy the week coming up, and yeah, stay in a positive mindset and know that everything is in divine timing at all times. And it's easier said than done, but if you can remind yourself in the moment, in those hard moments, and take a little bit of stress off yourself, and show yourself compassion, show yourself love. Love yourself, because ultimately it's only you're the only one here. You're everything that you see you're making for yourself. I'm glad that you're taking the time to be here and listen to this. So again, namaste, and yeah, again, thanks out to Grant Cameron for joining us tonight, and it was an amazing show. I hope you guys got everything you needed to, and any three-letter agencies listening, I'm praying for you as well. So talk to you later. Namaste.